Chapter 1774. The regiment commander, who was fully focused on the map, suddenly turned around. His gaze was locked, as if he didn't hear what the soldier had just said. He quickly asked, "What did you just say?" "Black 20 flew over Aruda Canyon 4 minutes ago. They are now preparing to fly to the military station to see if they can complete the landing." The soldier immediately repeated, "Aruda Canyon." The regiment commander quickly turned around again, bent down, and accurately pointed at Aruda Canyon with a pencil in his hand. Then, the regiment commander's eyes lit up. "Contact Black 20 immediately and order them to fly over Dabin. After landing, do their best to search for the missing art troupe." Now, it was Black 20 who was closest to the direction of the art troupe's disappearance. Aruda Canyon was a canyon formed during the Ice Age. In summer, the river gurgled, formed by the melting snow. All year round, the river was bone-chillingly cold. In winter, the river's surface would form a thick layer of ice, and it was completely possible to walk on it. The helicopter would arrive at a military station after flying over Aruda Canyon. Further up was the only way to reach the Immortal Bay outpost, Dabin. To reach the Immortal Bay outpost, one would need to cross 3 Dabins, Dabin, Mazagang Dabin, and Black Charing Dabin. After crossing the 3 Dabins, one would enter the Kangziva Martyr Cemetery that was guarded by more than 100 heroes in their lifetime and laid to rest after their death. From here, one would only be less than 200 kilometers away from the Immortal Bay outpost. And the direction of the art troupe's disappearance was the road from Dabin to the military station between Dabin and Mazagang Dabin. In January, the border was covered in snow. The wind and snow were fierce, and sometimes there would even be avalanches. The regiment commander didn't quite understand why the leaders would bring a group of delicate art troops to the Immortal Bay outpost to express their condolences at this time. It was said that they were going to celebrate the spring festival with the soldiers of the outpost, but at this time, there was still a month before the spring festival. There were strong winds, heavy snow, and avalanches. Every time the regiment commander thought about it, he couldn't help but think the worst. Were they here to express their condolences, or to die? He thought so in his heart, but he couldn't say it out loud. Now that he couldn't contact anyone and had encountered a snowstorm, the regiment commander felt that his warm heart was about to freeze into an ice cube. The faces of all the soldiers on the Black 20 were extremely tense. Yi Qian took the parachute and looked at the cockpit with a grave expression. Then he asked Li Jinyin in a low voice, "If we jump, what about the pilot?" She had clearly heard the crew say that they had to save the helicopter. The Black 20 was not a plane produced by our country, but an imported plane. To the pilot, the plane was his life. It's not easy to train a pilot who can adapt to the Highland climate and has experience in Highland flying. I won't let him lose his life to protect the patrol plane. She was a little nervous. She clenched her hands so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Li Jinyin didn't think much of it. He patted the back of her hand gently. "Don't be afraid. The worst hasn't happened yet." Yi Qian shook his head gently. "I'm not afraid. I'm worried about the pilot." Just now, when the soldiers were discussing, they agreed that they could save the patrol plane as much as possible. "I'm worried that if the worst happens, the pilot will successfully jump." She didn't feel much fear. Wearing this military uniform, she was prepared to sacrifice herself at any time. Li Jinyin was slightly surprised by her answer. He thought that she was afraid, but he didn't expect that she was only worried about the life and death of her comrades. The female soldier was Qing Yao. She always surprised him inadvertently. Chapter 1775. Piloting a helicarrier on the plateau was already a challenge, and piloting in a snowstorm was even more of a challenge to the power of nature with one's life. However, ever since the Frontier Corps became the air patrol guards here, they couldn't remember how many times they had challenged the power of nature. Yi Qian was sitting second on the right. Therefore, from her point of view, except for the pilot's expression, she could see the expressions of all the other soldiers. In front, the crew and the pilot cooperated seamlessly. In the face of bad weather, they always remained calm and faced all the difficulties in front of them calmly. Exquisite flying skills, strong psychological qualities, and fearless performance in the face of danger undoubtedly gave all the comrades of the Storm Commandos and the Snowfield Brigade a deeper confidence. Because they believed in them, they never felt afraid. It'll be fine. They're just preparing for the worst. The plateau's climate is changeable, and winter patrols are like 3 meals a day for the soldiers. Li Jinyan, who had been calm from the beginning, looked calm. Although his tall and stalwart body was shaking violently, he still had the steadiness of a mountain. As the commander, the situation in front of him was just a small emergency. There was nothing to be afraid of. During the bumpy process, they couldn't move at any time. The Black 20 pilot looked calm and kept heading in the direction given by the three-dimensional navigation map. He flew the helicopter through the vast snowstorm and headed toward the military depot. Flying from a plateau 2,000 meters above sea level to a plateau 5,000 meters above sea level, Yi Qian didn't quite understand why they chose to fly with the wind and snow to a lower altitude, but why they chose to fly against the wind to a higher altitude. In the mind of a normal person, if they wanted to land safely, they would definitely choose a lower altitude. But neither the Black 20 nor the commander of the Frontier Corps chose a lower altitude. With this question in mind, Yi Qian thought that if she could ask for an explanation, she would definitely ask when she landed. Knowing that the Black 20 didn't successfully land and chose to continue flying, Xia Jinyuan looked at the snowy sky with blurred vision, and his thin lips were tightly pursed. Their wireless communication was completely interrupted, and there was no way to contact anywhere. The satellite of the snowy plateau had basically entered the final stage of testing. If the satellite connection was fully realized, it would probably be around June to July of the millennium. It was only January now, and there was still half a year to go. Xia Jinyuan's eyes darkened when he saw a figure walking out of the heavy snow. It was the great whale, leading the soldiers who were responsible for camouflaging the 3 helicopters back to the wind shelter. He strode into the cave. He didn't even have the time to pat off the snow on his body. With a dark expression, he said in a tense voice, "Q King, the Land-Air Navigation Station has sent a message. More than 10 cultural soldiers, along with their leaders and soldiers from the military station, have disappeared. They are heading to Shanxian Bay to spend the spring festival with the station officials." At this time, there was a snowstorm in the northwest of Xinjiang, and the snow had sealed the mountains. They were a group of Special Forces soldiers, and they were here for training. However, wasn't it nonsense for them to come at this time? Do you still want to live? The whale thought to himself gloomily. Xia Jinyuan did not care about why the people from the art troupe chose this time to come over. He was more concerned about the purpose of the navigation channel. Who received the message? Tell him to come to me. With his thin lips pursed into a straight line, Xia Jinyuan turned around and strode towards the wind shelter. At the same time, he said to Z7 Hanjing, "Give me the map of the northwest border and show me all the detailed topographic maps from the military station at the foot of the mountain to Xinxian Bay." Chapter 1776. Here, as the captain, Xia Jinyuan was the supreme commander. His every word was binding and carried out by every soldier. No one could defy him. Even if Han Jiang was Xia Jinyuan's childhood friend, he had to listen to Xia Jinyuan's orders at this time. He responded with a yes and immediately carried out Xia Jinyuan's orders. The Jing called the soldiers of the Land Navigation Regiment over and asked Xia Jinyuan to inquire about the relevant matters. Losing contact with 20 people was not a small matter. If something really happened, the relevant personnel would be held accountable. Therefore, when the soldier of the Land Navigation Regiment came over, Xia Jinyuan did not even let him salute first. He directly said, "What did your regiment commander say?" Reporting to Chief, "Our station received 2 messages from the ground navigation station. The first time, we need you to lead the soldiers over Kurila and enter the road where the Arts and Crafts Regiment went missing. The second time, we received another message. As the Black 20 crew has already flown over Aruda Gorge, the regiment commander ordered the Black 20 crew and the 10 soldiers who have yet to land to search for the missing Arts and Crafts Regiment soldiers." Han Jiang had already pulled up the map he needed. Xia Jinyuan, who was about to take the laptop, narrowed his eyes slightly. The Black 20 was Yi Qian's patrol plane. Has the Black 20 completed its landing? The Black 20 is preparing to land at the military station. We don't know if it has completed its landing yet. The soldier of the Land Navigation Regiment answered truthfully. He was also quite worried about his brothers on the Black 20 patrol plane and hoped that they could land as soon as possible. De Jing, who was beside him, couldn't help but clench his fists when he heard this. There was still time until the snowstorm. Looking at his watch, De Jing couldn't help but secretly gasp. It had been more than 3 hours since the snowstorm. 3 hours and 21 minutes. Xia Jinyuan looked at the time displayed on the laptop and accurately calculated the time in his heart. With his gaze locked on the laptop, Xia Jinyuan's slender fingers quickly pressed the buttons and adjusted the satellite map to the detailed topographic map he wanted to see. Without looking up, he asked the soldier of the Land Navigation Regiment, "Which section of the road did the Arts and Crafts Regiment go missing?" With 20 people missing, the Land Navigation Regiment was mainly responsible for air patrols. The ground search was left to the Army. The soldiers of the Military Aviation Regiment did not answer immediately. They stood there awkwardly. The second time he contacted the ground navigation station, the regiment commander personally told him not to involve too many people in this matter for the time being. There were also different levels of accountability, so as to avoid implicating the Army brothers who came for training. After waiting for dozens of seconds, Xia Jinyuan, who did not hear a reply, raised his head and saw the embarrassed look on the faces of the soldiers of the aviation regiment. He said with a faint smile, "What's there to be embarrassed about? Now that I already know, do you think that if you don't tell me, I can pretend that I don't know? Continue to hide in the wind tunnel to avoid the wind and snow? Soldier, don't forget that my comrades are still on the Black 20. Your regiment commander has already sent them to assist the soldiers who went to search for the art troop. Isn't it a little too late to worry about me taking responsibility? If it was a normal day, he wouldn't have to worry too much. However, with the snowstorm, he couldn't just stand there and do nothing." Xia Jinyuan curled his lips and smiled at the embarrassed soldier of the Land Navigation Regiment. He didn't make things difficult for the soldier and analyzed the approximate location of the art troop. "Can't say. TSK, I've already said too much." The regiment commander of the Land Navigation Regiment was a clever person. Sometimes, even the instructor couldn't win against him and ordered the soldiers not to reveal the location of the art troop. However, other than not clearly telling him the location of the art troop, everything else was clear. Chapter 1777. Going up Aruda Canyon was the only way to get to the outpost of Shunxian Bay. Further up was Kudi Dabin. Further up Kudi Dabin was Mazadaban. According to the characteristics of the patrol plane, it was impossible to fly directly to Mazadaban. Therefore, the military station where the patrol plane landed was Kudi Dabin's military station. Originally, the commander of the Military Aviation Regiment had intended for them to search for the missing art troop. Now, it had become Yi Jian. Xia Jinyuan's brain was working at high speed as he thought quickly. First, he pulled up his location. Then, he pulled up the Aruda Canyon that the Black 20 patrol plane had flown past. As his slender fingers flew across the keyboard, a triangle was drawn on the satellite map. After some adjustments, he locked onto the missing art troop's location in less than 3 minutes. The soldiers standing behind him were nervous. Regiment commander, he really didn't say anything. After staring at the location he locked onto for a few seconds, Xia Jinyuan raised his head again. His gaze was extremely cold. His handsome eyebrows seemed to be covered with frost, making him look so cold that it was as if a mountain was about to collapse. People couldn't help but be in awe of him. He stood up so that the soldiers could be clearer about the location he locked onto. He said in a deep voice, "Is the missing art troop's location on the road between Kudi Dabin and Mazadaban?" The soldier was so nervous that his legs were tense and his back was straight. He quickly glanced at the satellite map on his laptop. He didn't dare to look at the young major whose face was as calm as water. He couldn't answer, and he couldn't answer. He just stood there without saying a word, using his silence to refuse. He had no choice. The regiment commander had instructed him not to reveal too much. However, even if he didn't reveal too much, The young major accurately locked onto the missing art troops location in less than 3 minutes based on the locations he just mentioned. The soldier felt like crying. Regiment commander, the things that you asked me to say were actually things that I couldn't say. Once I said it, the major would know the exact location. Then, what does the major want to do next? As he thought about it, the soldier suddenly shuddered, and he felt a little uncomfortable. The smile that the major gave him just now made him think of a possibility. No way, no way. Could it be that he wants to participate in the rescue? This... Isn't he afraid of being held accountable? The eyes of the soldiers of the Land Navigation Regiment widened in disbelief. Big Whale's furrowed brows relaxed a little. He bent down slightly and whispered, "Q King, the regiment commander still wants us to participate in the search. What are your arrangements?" "There are no other arrangements. Our brothers are all on the Black 20 patrol plane. For humanitarian reasons, they can't just stand by and do nothing. As for me, I can't just sit there and wait," Xia Jinyuan said calmly, his cold eyes on the triangular map. His eyes is cold and dark. Until now, the soldiers still couldn't guess what their regiment commanders. The regiment commander really didn't want Xia Jinyuan to be held accountable at that time. So when he knew that the Black 20 had flown over the Aruda Canyon, he immediately changed his mind and ordered the crew on the Black 20 to provide support. In this way, the Army soldiers in the Black 20 would definitely not stand by and watch. They would join the search party together with the aircrew and the soldiers from the military depot. Chapter 1778. If something really happened to the art troop, the higher-ups wouldn't be able to hold accountable the soldiers who volunteered to join the search. Instead, they would be rewarded for their responsibility. However, he still had to consider one more thing, and that was the captain of the army. He had to let this captain know that his soldiers were participating in the search. After all, he had indirectly borrowed his soldiers to join the search. This was an unexpected search that could happen at any time, so he had to let the captain know. After the captain knew about it, if he felt that he didn't need to lead his own troops to support, he could stay in the wind tunnel and wait for news. If he was worried or wanted to participate, then it would be considered a voluntary search, and the military wouldn't hold him accountable. The commander of the Military Aviation Regiment had his own plans, but he couldn't tell his soldiers in such detail, much less tell the soldiers who were facing Xia Jinyuan one by one. Whether the captain of the army understood his intentions or not depended on how good the individual's comprehension ability was. After contacting the Black 24 crew for the second time, he instructed his soldiers to tell the captain of the army appropriately, but not to say anything else. When Xia Jinyuan told the soldiers that there were soldiers from the army on the Black 20 patrol aircraft, he vaguely guessed the intentions of the commander of the Military Aviation Regiment. That was why he said that the commander was a wonderful person. When the triangular belt was drawn, he could confirm the intentions of the commander of the Military Aviation Regiment. There were some things and some words that a commander couldn't say or do, and it was even more impossible for him to make arrangements as he pleased. The Army's rules and regulations weren't just for show, and military discipline wasn't just for show. Whoever made a mistake would be severely punished regardless of their rank. It was precisely because the commander of the Military Aviation Regiment had such high awareness that he had such a plan. Xia Jinyuan, who understood his intentions, naturally wouldn't make things difficult for a soldier who had received his orders. After asking the soldier whether the art troop's location was the Tibetan route to Mazadakan, he didn't even need the other party to answer. He already knew the answer from his expression. "Okay, I understand. You can leave." Xia Jinyuan, whose handsome face was even colder than the snowy weather outside, signaled for the soldier to leave. It was easy to handle now that he knew. He had to make detailed arrangements. The soldier's expression was about to collapse. "Major, what do you know? I didn't say anything. So what do you know? Were they really planning to bring so many Lu Jun brothers over the mountain range to join the search? From where they were, it would take at least half a day." Xia Jinyuan didn't have time to talk to the soldier who was so embarrassed that his eyebrows were furrowed. He needed to calculate how long it would take for them to enter Kudi Dabin. Black 20 will try to land as soon as possible, and we don't have to enter the Tibetan line. We can move forward while searching the carpet to see if there are any lost art troop soldiers along the way. Xia Jinyuan was an excellent decision-maker. Once he made a decision, he would not put it off again and again. Instead, he would take action immediately and make careful arrangements at the same time. Time, weather, and location did not allow him to consider for too long. He had to make a decision as soon as possible. Kuti Dabin, in the Uyghur language, meant a snowy mountain that even monkeys can't climb. The slope was 27 kilometers long, and it was the lowest of the 3 Dabins in the Immortal Bay outpost. It was also the beginning of the toughest journey. Chapter 1779. The effect would not be too obvious on the plateau of Kuti Dabin, but the difference in air pressure was great. If one was not careful when climbing the mountain for the first time, it was easy to cause their eardrums to swell. It was similar to the sound of eardrums on a plane. In serious cases, it could cause their eardrums to rupture. Mazadaban was even more dangerous than Kuti Dabin. It was the longest Dabin of the Tibetan line. The continuous slope was almost 40 kilometers long, and the mountain was steep. It was a place where not even a blade of grass grew, and the mountain was covered in brown gravel. Mazadaban meant grave in the Uyghur language. From this, one could see how dangerous it was. A group of greenhouse flowers in the army had come to the border due to the strong wind and heavy snow. They even went to the Xinxian Bay outpost, which was known as the Forbidden Zone for life, with only 48% oxygen in the planes. What kind of arrangement did the leaders of the rescue command have? As for the Spring Festival condolences, he did not really believe it. Now was not the time to guess why the leaders had made such arrangements. Xia Jinyuan carefully looked at the map and calculated the time they would arrive at Kuti Dabin before making further arrangements. There were no storm commandos in his arrangement. For safety reasons, they had even chosen to train at a low altitude. How could the storm commandos, who had just arrived, withstand the high-altitude test? Perhaps they could withstand it. However, this time, they were going to rescue the storm commandos. Time was tight. If something happened to one of the storm commandos midway, it would definitely bring trouble to the entire team. After considering all the factors, Xia Jinyuan did not allow the storm commandos to participate in this operation. De Jing and the others also knew that this arrangement was undoubtedly the most correct one. Although they wanted to advance and retreat together with their comrades in the Snowfield Brigade, they had to consider the current situation. Demon King said that every soldier in the Snowfield Brigade had undergone altitude training, and they had already adapted to the high-altitude climate. Watching their vigorous figures rush directly into the snow, De Jing once again realized how big the gap was between them and the special forces of the army. De Jing, compared to them, "We are really too far behind," Sea Anemone said softly. His voice was a little depressed. Too far behind, too far behind. After getting along for a month, they clearly saw the strength of the Army Special Warfare Special Forces. They could really soar into the sky and dive into the ground. When they went into the sea, they were like dragons returning to the sea. They were clearly a special forces of the sea, land, and air. The great whale sighed as well. "Yes, training with them has helped me see my own shortcomings more clearly, and I'm more aware of the gap between myself and the strong. Speaking of which, our storm commandos have benefited greatly from this training. Together, they would work hard for next year's overseas competition. Along the way, other than being better than the Shuiyu team at sea, they had also taught the Shuiyu team many new ways of fighting at sea. When they reached the desert and highlands, the Shuiyu team would be the ones teaching them. The commander had once said, being able to train with this Army Special Warfare Special Forces is equivalent to half a year's worth of training. He wasn't exaggerating at all. The blizzard howled all the way from the snowy mountains, and the blizzard seemed to be able to swallow the entire world. Yi Qian, who had alighted from the J-20 patrol plane, finally understood why they didn't go to the lower altitude. This place was a natural wind shelter that cut off most of the blizzard's power. After getting off the plane, they didn't rest. Instead, They immediately set off towards Mazadaban with the squad leader who had been waiting for them. Along with them, other than Li Jinyin, the rest of the storm commandos stayed at the military depot, which was more than 3,000 meters above sea level. Chapter 1780. Yi Qian didn't expect that his first mission after returning to the plateau would be a rescue mission. There weren't many soldiers stationed at the military depot. If there were, he wouldn't need their help. The regiment commander didn't ask them to join the search and rescue mission. Instead, he only ordered the Black 20 aircrew, including the pilot, to cooperate with the military depot to quickly search for the missing art soldiers along the Tibetan line. J5 understood the military strength of each military depot. He frowned after doing some calculations. In addition, he knew that the main focus of the military was air patrol, so he immediately discussed with Li Jinyin to see if they could participate in the search and rescue mission first. It was fine if he didn't know, but now that he knew, he couldn't just stand by and watch. When the squad leader of the military depot learned that 6 soldiers could join the search and rescue mission, he was so happy that his eyes lit up. But when he learned that a female soldier would join the search and rescue mission, there was obvious hesitation on his face. He wanted to ask Yi Qian to stay, but J5 didn't give him a chance to speak and went straight to the point. When the squad leader saw this, he glanced at the female soldier who was already sitting in the front passenger seat. He was still a little worried and reminded her implicitly. There's a saying in the local area that Ku is dangerous, Ma Jia Chong, and Hei Cha is worrisome. We're going to Ma Jia Dabin. The entire Tibetan line is quite dangerous, so it might not be appropriate for a female soldier to sit in the front passenger seat. Actually, he wanted to ask Yi Qian to stay, but J5 pretended not to understand and said to Zhang Ying, the squad leader is right. Let's swap her out. You can sit in the front passenger seat. At this time, he definitely had to take Yi Qian along. How could he let her stay when she was such a good courage training? Yi Qian was looking at some medicine prepared by the military depot for altitude sickness. He grabbed a large bag of medicine and got out of the car to swap seats with Zhang Ying. The squad leader is worried about you and wants you to stay. J5 pretended not to understand, so the squad leader is too embarrassed to mention it again. Zhang Ying reminded him in a low voice before getting into the car. Don't talk to the squad leader for now. Let J5 handle it first. This is an opportunity to train your courage. You can't stay. After 30 days of training together, Zhang Ying, Yao Zi, and the other members of the Snowfield Brigade who hadn't interacted with Yi Qian before now got along very well and completely treated Yi Qian as their comrade. With his reminder, Yi Qian got into the car and pretended to be invisible. The platoon leader of the military station spoke to J5 in a low voice. We highly suspect that the art troop has lost contact due to the avalanche. The place where they lost contact is on a steep slope about 47 kilometers away from our military station. It's 58 kilometers away from Sechala Rural Camp. Sechala Village Camp has already sent out soldiers to search along the way. In order to find the missing art troop as soon as possible, we will send out more people to search and try to find everyone as soon as possible. The leader of the reinforcement command set off from the military depot with the art troop this morning. The vehicle they used was a military truck, which was also the military truck used by the 30-mile barracks to deliver supplies to the various camps. Yi Qian and the others rode in the military station's only military truck. At that time, the military station's soldiers served it as a national treasure. The driver was a third-class sergeant with 15 years of experience driving on the Tibetan line. The snow on the road was very deep. Although the military truck with metal teeth moved very slowly, it was still better than walking. The soldiers of the aviation regiment could tell that the army that had joined the support without saying anything was not an ordinary soldier. They did not ask if they were afraid. They only told them that the driver was a third-rank sergeant who had been in the army for 17 years and had 15 years of driving experience on the Tibetan line. Chapter 1781. The third-rank sergeant driving had 15 years of driving experience, which was enough to make people feel at ease. Not only was the Tibetan route bumpy, but there were also dangerous and sharp curves. Even a third-rank soldier with 15 years of driving experience on the Tibetan route drove extremely slowly. Inside the car, the squad leader opened a map and pointed at the most dangerous part of the route to Mazadaban. Because he was worried, his voice was tense as he said, "This place is a natural stronghold. It's also the longest and most dangerous part of the route to Mazadaban. It's also the most prone to avalanches. We previously advised the leader to give up on the decision to go to the outpost. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to persuade him. Instead, they learned that this place was quite dangerous. The leader originally planned to rest for 2 nights before leaving, but when he saw that the weather was clear, he decided to leave early the next morning. It looked like there was something urgent that needed to be taken care of, and they couldn't afford to waste even a minute. The leaders of the rescue command made a decision. As soldiers, they couldn't forcefully stop them, so they could only send a veteran to accompany them and take care of them along the way, who knew that the weather would be so good, but they didn't arrive on time. Now that they encountered a snowstorm, anyone with a bit of experience would know that something big was going on. When the J5 heard this, his face became a bit distorted. He couldn't understand why they chose this time to visit the soldiers at the outpost. This wasn't a visit. It was clearly causing trouble. It could be seen that the squad leader also thought the same. When he saw the subtle expression of the major, he couldn't help but sigh. Maybe there's something urgent that needs to be done, so there's no other choice but to go. If there really was something urgent, there's no way they would bring a group of delicate art and literature soldiers. The squad leader knew that his words had no effect, but he still had to say a few words. The J5 gave him face and said, "Maybe there really is something urgent." He looked at the squad leader, and both of them silently looked away. Everyone had the same thought, so there was no need to say anything else. The Tibetan route was sealed off by heavy snow, so at the end of November, the border station wouldn't let any vehicles pass. As a result, the only vehicle on the White Tibetan route was Yi Qian's group of 8 slowly driving up the Serpentine Road. The class leader, who was exposed to UV rays all year round, was the same as all the soldiers stationed at the border. Her hands and face were tanned to a dark purple color. Due to the lack of oxygen all year round, cracks appeared on her originally plump fingernails. Her fingernails were sunken, and even her joints were swollen. However, the 27-year-old class leader looked a decade older than her actual age. After his discussion with J5, he finally had some time to look at the soldiers in the same truck. He was sitting in the innermost part of the truck, so he had to lean forward slightly to see Yi Qian sitting in the middle. Looking at the only female soldier accompanying them, he couldn't help but feel nervous. There were quite a number of female soldiers in the Lost Arts troop. This brave female soldier, would she need to be taken care of when the time came? Female soldiers were definitely rare to the male soldiers at the military depot and the outpost. Other than the female soldiers at Camp 30 Li, even the military doctors stationed here were all male military doctors. If the male military doctors were too busy to handle the drips, the comrades had to remove the needles and change the drips themselves. There were no nurses to help them. Yi Qian, who was cleaning up the medical supplies in the military depot, sensed something and looked up to see a face with cracked lips and purplish-black skin. Chapter 1782. She did not avoid his gaze. She smiled gently at the squad leader, who looked a little embarrassed after being discovered by her. She lowered her head and continued to count the medical supplies. The squad leader blushed at the female soldier's flower-like smile. Female soldiers were rare to begin with. Now that there was a female soldier who was even prettier than the one they thought was the most beautiful, he did not dare to look her in the eye. They were already in the car. He did not leave the female soldier behind. He would pay more attention to the female soldier later. The squad leader thought so and stopped paying attention to Yi Qian. As a male soldier, it was rude of him to stare at a female soldier. However, this female soldier was indeed stronger than the missing female soldier. She did not say that she needed to take a breath of oxygen. Li Jingyan, who was resting with his eyes closed, did not speak. Although he had altitude training, he was definitely not as experienced as the J5. At this moment, he only needed to learn from the J5. The zigzag mountain road climbed along the mountain as if it was winding directly into heaven. No matter how slow the car was driving, the sharp bends and steep slopes still made everyone in the car sway greatly. Sometimes they would even fall forward and backward. The whole process was like somersaulting. Even their stomachs would be disturbed. The world's highest, most difficult, and most dangerous Tibetan route was under the wheels of the car. Yi Qian, who had finished counting the medical supplies, also closed his eyes to concentrate. His body swayed with the car. Although he could not sleep, it would reduce the symptoms of motion sickness. After driving for about 30 kilometers, the truck slowly came to a stop. As soon as the car stopped, everyone in the car opened their eyes. Yi Qian turned his head to look outside. Judging from the dim light through the gap in the windshield curtain, he knew that the sky was already dark. At this moment, all the light that entered his eyes was the light of snow. Chan Ying, who got out of the car, walked to the back of the car and said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid that the missing art troupe is one of them." This was not good news. Everyone in the car jumped out of the car with tense faces. Only then did they realize that the car had stopped at the top of a mountain. Taking advantage of the dim light, they could see the longest and most dangerous Tibetan route leading to Mazadaban. One of the sections of the route had been blocked by the collapsed snow. Avalanche was one of the terrifying forces of nature. Yi Qian used his binoculars to observe that it was not far away, but in fact, it was still about 10 kilometers away. He slowly looked up and saw that one side of the snowy mountain seemed to have been cut in half. The never-melting snow was crumbling down from the top of the mountain. Even from such a distance, even if the avalanche had stopped, it was still frightening to see. The Snowfield Brigade members who saw the scene before them all pursed their lips. J5 whispered to Li Jinyan, "Half of the mountain has collapsed. I'm afraid it's a disaster. There's a ring road ahead." The two drivers are sergeants who have more than 10 years of experience in hiding roads. If they discover any abnormalities, they may enter the ring road to avoid this avalanche. Li Jinyan adjusted the focus of the binoculars and carefully observed the avalanche path. As long as we enter the ring road, it will be more auspicious than ominous. When J5 heard this, he knew that he had taken this dangerous route before. He remembered it so clearly that it was not his first or second time. He must have gone back and forth countless times to be able to remember it. There was indeed a section of the ring road. One of the routes was cut halfway into the mountain, and the approximate location of the avalanche from here was the ring road. At this time, it had been 6 hours since they lost contact with the art troupe. Chapter 1783. The only fortunate thing was that the heavy snow had already stopped. Snow clouds had covered the sky, and now there were stars in the sky. It was impossible to tell that there was a snowstorm during the day. No one could guarantee that an avalanche would not happen again, and no one mentioned what they should do if there was another avalanche. Because they had no choice, they came here to search for the missing art troupe. Even if they could not guarantee that there would not be another avalanche, they had to continue moving forward. The car went from climbing to rushing down. Before reaching the avalanche site, the third-rank sergeant stepped on the brakes hard the entire time. Long Eagle was responsible for observing the situation along the way. Once he noticed anything unusual, he would immediately inform the driver. Along the way, Long Eagle reminded the driver a few times. It was as if the driver had eaten a calming pill. He knew that the person sitting beside him was also experienced. The car stopped about 2 kilometers away from the avalanche site. Other than the driver who stayed in the car, the rest of the soldiers had to walk the rest of the way. Walk with the mountain. If there is another avalanche, we can only say sorry to the army brothers. Unless we grow a pair of wings, we will not be able to fly out. The military station leader joked about the possible consequences in a serious manner so that everyone would be mentally prepared. The soldier from the army regiment replied with a smile, "Wait for our iron eagles to conquer this place. If there is any accident, we will directly search from the air." This was a very serious answer, because the army regiment's goal was to implement the Border Defense Company's full air patrol. Then I have to congratulate Brother Liu Hang in advance for conquering the snow mountains as soon as possible so that it will be convenient for our brothers later. The military station leader walked in front without hesitation and led the way into the dangerous place. More than 3 kilometers away from them, a truck was parked in the ring road. Inside the truck, 7 female art troop soldiers wearing thick windproof and cold clothes huddled together, relying on each other's warmth to keep themselves warm. Occasionally, they would shiver and look out of the truck, then quickly lower their heads and hug each other for warmth and comfort. They're not back yet. We won't really freeze to death here, right? A female soldier said with a hoarse voice. She was very afraid. Just by listening to her trembling voice, one could tell that she was afraid. When she opened her mouth, there were soft sobs. If we really freeze to death, it's our fate. But such a sacrifice is too meaningless. If not for. The sobbing female soldier didn't say out loud. Although she didn't say it out loud, all the female soldiers in the car understood what she was talking about. What can we do? Who asked her to have a high-ranking official as her father? If she wants to make a contribution, we have to obediently accompany her. Even the male soldiers on the Tibetan route did not dare to come to the snow-sealed northwest region. Yet, she was the one who was stupid and insisted on coming. And you still say that this is the time to show that our art troupe is not to be trifled with? Bah! Even if she wants to contribute, she doesn't need to use our lives to do so. As soon as someone opened his mouth, it was as if he had opened a chatterbox. Immediately, another person joined in the conversation. They were too scared. Their surroundings were so quiet that it was as if they had been completely forgotten. It was so quiet that it was as if their lives had come to an end. It was so quiet that they couldn't help but say things that they usually only dared to think in their hearts and never say out loud. The evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear. Something must have happened to her now. Perhaps she and her car have been buried by the snow. You want to show off? Let's see how she performs now that she has lost her life. The more they talked, the more the 7 female soldiers felt as if there was a fire burning in their hearts. Even their eyes seemed to be flickering with flames. Chapter 1784. As the 7 female soldiers spoke, they burst into tears due to their own words. What was the use of being angry at this moment? There was no use at all. They were going to lose their lives. Woohoo! I hate her to death. I hate her to death. I had already applied for annual leave and was going to spend the new year with my parents. In the end, she came to find me and instigated me to come with her. I hate her to death. I hate her to death. She came to find someone. Why did she drag us to our deaths with her? I hate her to death. I hate her to death. Came to find someone? Who was she looking for? What did she mean? Foo-wee. What did you say? Say it again. A female soldier suddenly asked sharply. She stared at her comrade who was about to faint from crying without wiping her tears. Say it again. The female soldier who was called out realized that she had misspoken. She, who was already afraid, was so shocked that she burped. She had been crying the loudest. Now, she shrunk her shoulders and cried softly in a corner. Women were sharp to begin with. Immediately after, another female soldier reacted and shouted in shock and anger. Foo-wee, you better explain it to us clearly. A second ago, they had been united against a common enemy. Now, everyone's attention was focused on Foo-wee. They had all realized that there was something wrong with their risky venture into the northwest of the border to head to the high-altitude outpost. A female soldier who spoke in a refined manner but had strong logic stared at Foo-wee and asked clearly, Who are we looking for? We received orders to come and visit the soldiers at the outpost and celebrate the new year with them. Foo-wee, what do you know? Now, we're probably going to die here. If there's anything we don't know, you can tell us one by one so that we can understand what's going on. Because this female soldier named Foo-wee suddenly said something out of the blue, the other 6 female soldiers deeply felt that they had been deceived. They had come willingly to visit the soldiers at the outpost. They served the soldiers at the grassroots level and used their passion for art to infect the soldiers far away. They brought joy to their monotonous and boring garrison. Even if the journey was bumpy, they were fearless. Don't think that performing arts soldiers couldn't accomplish anything. They were all flowers in a greenhouse. Performing arts soldiers were also soldiers and had the courage of soldiers. They could use loud military songs to boost the soldiers' morale and heroism. They could also effectively stimulate the soldiers' dreams of becoming a powerful country and stimulate their passion for battle. Although they weren't soldiers fighting on the front lines, as performing arts soldiers, they also had dreams. They were very willing to go to difficult areas to bring music and laughter to the soldiers at the grassroots level. However, they definitely couldn't accept that someone would sacrifice everyone's precious time for their own selfish desires. In the face of her comrades' questioning, Fu Hui could only lower her head and cry softly. As the arm on her shoulder pulled away, Fu Hui, who had wanted to remain silent, panicked a little. She bit her lower lip and asked softly, "Will we all be sacrificed?" What kind of sacrifice is this if it's only for someone's own selfish interest? Do you know what sacrifice is? Of you. The sharp-tongued female soldier was also the first to discover the problem with Fu Hui's words. She was so cold that her lips turned purple. Due to her agitated emotions, she had no choice but to breathe in oxygen as she spoke. Chapter 1785. A female soldier sitting beside her gently stroked her back and said politely, "Lu Yuan, don't be too agitated. Let's talk things out. I believe Fu Hui will give us an explanation. We've been trapped for more than 6 hours, and no one has come to save us. We'll probably die in a few more hours. Before that, let's talk things out. Don't be agitated. Fu Hui, let's talk things out. We're all comrades in the same department. We've been working together for a year or two. Since we're all going to die, why don't you give us a quick death?" The last sentence of the female soldier who spoke politely was filled with despair. It made Fu Hui shudder violently. Although the female soldier spoke very politely, one could tell from her words that she was not a female soldier without her own opinions. Fu Hui's face turned pale from her comrades' words. Although she couldn't see their expressions clearly, she could feel that their eyes were filled with anger. The person in question wasn't here, so they transferred their anger to her. She stuttered until her teeth were chattering. Finally, she opened her mouth. I'll talk. Fine, I'll talk. I won't have a chance to talk in the future anyway." Fu Hui, who was already in despair, told them everything she knew in one breath. However, she didn't know much. She couldn't explain everything in 5 sentences. Although it was only a few sentences, it was enough to make the other 6 female soldiers grit their teeth in hatred. The art troupe sat in 2 cars. The 7 female soldiers, 2 soldiers from 30 Li camp who accompanied them, and 2 young men who weren't from the art troupe sat in the same car. The other 2 female soldiers and 2 male soldiers accompanied the leader in the other car. The accident happened in the car with the leader. Before the snow collapsed, the driver noticed something was amiss. He reacted quickly and turned the steering wheel to the inner side of the hidden line at the critical moment. He wanted to rush into the ring road to avoid the disaster. However, the snow fell too quickly. It was so fast that even though the driver made the correct decision, the entire car was still blown off the cliff by the snow. Now, the suspension of the car was supported by the front of the car that was left on the hidden line. No one knew how long the front of the car could last, and no one knew if there would be another avalanche. Cover it tightly and put a stone behind the front wheel. The veteran from 30 Mile Barracks said very calmly. He then said optimistically to a tall man with elegant features, "Don't worry. As long as we save the people in the car, we can survive for at least 4 days with the supplies in the car. The Mappa military depot must be thinking of ways to save us now. I guess this avalanche covered a large area and sealed off all the hidden routes. They will need some time to find us here. So, don't be afraid. We'll be fine." Avalanches were common occurrences for the veterans who had been in the Northwest for nearly 10 years. This time, the snow that rushed out was not very powerful and did not directly push the entire car off the cliff. The supplies in the car were complete. There were coats, food, and fruits. As long as they had these, they could survive. If everything went well, they would be rescued by tomorrow at the latest. The man who had tied the 2 front wheels together with 2 soldiers stood up and smiled at the veteran who was comforting him. "I was really scared before, but now I'm much calmer. Then we'll have food and warmth. Then we'll save everyone in the car and wait for rescue. Chapter 1786. Before he set off, he was prepared to encounter an avalanche. Although he was mentally prepared, it was inevitable that he would be scared if he really encountered one. This was a normal person's normal reaction to danger. He didn't think it was shameful to say it out directly. Hey, as a reporter, your comprehension ability is high. Reporter Chin, when you return to the capital, this will be a good article. The soldier who worked together with him also spoke with an optimistic smile. He looked at Reporter Chin, who was said to be from the news department and had an indescribable temperament. Then he looked at his hands that were red because of the rope. The soldier couldn't bear to see him like this. He was originally a reporter, but he almost lost his life. But he didn't see any fear in him. He believed that he had really entered and exited the hidden line. Only people who had walked through the hidden line several times had such courage. Qin Xiu, who had temporarily become a reporter, looked at the face that was actually 1 year younger than him, but looked 5 or 6 years older than him. He took the rope from the soldier's hand and said with a smile, "I'll tie it to the back of the car now. You can rest for a while." He had been to the border 4 times, but this was the first time he encountered an avalanche. Because of this, he saw the extraordinary ability of this group of car soldiers who had been walking in the life-forbidden zone for many years. If it weren't for the car soldiers' quick reaction and emergency retreat to the ring road before the heavy snow fell, the car he was sitting in would not have been as lucky as the car in front. It was very likely that it would have been directly washed off the cliff by the heavy snow. The two of them tightened the rope again. After confirming that the 2 front wheels were really tied, they dug out 2 stones that had been washed down by the snow and placed them behind the front tires. Qin Xiu stepped on the stones that could prevent the front tires from sliding down with 1 foot. Then, he pulled up the rope and climbed through the snow that had been piled up for who knew how many years. This time, it was the first time that the snow had washed down. Qin Xiu, who couldn't walk and could only walk by crawling, spent nearly 20 minutes carefully climbing over the snow pile that would have directly slid down the cliff if he hadn't paid attention. He climbed back to the car that he was sitting in. That was fine. He walked to the back of the surprisingly quiet car and said to the female soldiers inside, "You all come down for the time being. You can't stay in the car for the time being." In order to prevent the car from sliding down again, the veteran suggested tying the front tire with a rope and then tying it to the hook of the car that was not involved in the accident. This way, the front of the car would have a strong point. The angry female soldiers in the carriage stopped quarreling. Instead, they sat quietly, suppressing the anger in their hearts. When they heard the man who had told them not to move, they raised their eyes slightly and looked at each other in the dark, but no one moved. 2 minutes later, there was still no movement in the carriage. Qin Xiu's heart suddenly sank, and he directly lifted the heavy windproof curtain. He saw the 7 female soldiers who had been screaming in fright before were sitting in the innermost seat. When they heard the movement, they all looked at him. Everyone was still there and didn't wander off. Qin Xiu, who was relieved, glanced at them coldly and said, "Get out of the car. Let's save our comrades in the car in front. What's the point of saving them? They'll die anyway. Save your strength for writing your last words." The female soldier, named Lu Yuan, was angry as soon as she opened her mouth. Her words were also extremely harsh. Save your strength too. Don't write any news articles. You're accompanying the daughter of a high-ranking official to look for people. You're going to lose your life here. Why do you care about saving people? Chapter 1787. Qin Xiu could not help but frown at their harsh and cold voices. He did not care who they were targeting. He only cared about saving people. Get out of the car. Don't make me repeat myself. Qin Xiu did not like to talk too much. He did not like to repeat the same thing over and over again. Although there was a group of female soldiers in front of him, they would not make him change his principle of doing things. The man's voice was very cold. It was completely different from his usual elegance when he was chatting with them. The 7 female soldiers gritted their teeth and unwillingly bent their backs as they got out of the car. It was all snowy outside, casting shadows on them. Looking at the 7 frightened female soldiers, Qin Xiu's gaze swept across them one by one. Now is not the time to throw a tantrum. Listening to your grievances, I believe that none of you really want to give up your lives. Now, only our car is safe. The car in front is in danger. Your comrades, leaders, and the soldiers who accompanied you are in the car. No matter who you are targeting now, as soldiers, shouldn't you put aside your prejudices and get through this together? Although you are all soldiers of the arts, you have the courage to choose to go to the outpost to comfort the soldiers at the grassroots level. It shows that you are a group of courageous female soldiers. Since you always remember that you are a soldier, I believe that you will remember the responsibilities that a soldier should bear. There was no reprimand or criticism. There was only gentle and elegant persuasion. It made the 7 female soldiers' expression soften. You have said all the great principles. If we don't cooperate, we will be letting down the military uniform that we are wearing. You are indeed from the news department. You are so eloquent. There is no justice in this world. Someone almost harmed us. In the end, we still have to save the person who harmed us. Qin Xiu heard the soft mutterings of the female soldiers. He only heard them and did not say anything else. His gaze landed on one of the female soldiers named Wei Jiayue. After the incident, he jumped out of the car to ask about the female soldier situation. It was Wei Jiayue who stood out to answer him. Although she was trembling in fear at that time, she could still maintain a sense of calmness and communicate with him. It showed that she had her own opinions and was also the leader of this group of female soldiers. Wei Jie was a female soldier who spoke gently but hit the nail on the head. After receiving Qin Xiu's gaze, she stepped forward and said, "What do you want us to do? Just say it. Take a shovel and shovel the snow on our car. The more the better. You also need to pat the snow to increase the weight of the car. 2 more female soldiers who are braver and follow me to the car. You are light. You need to climb to the car." This was really not good news. Although they were cursing the guy who almost made them lose face, when they heard that there was no movement from their comrades in the car in front of them, their hearts tightened. 6 hours had passed since the avalanche. It took them nearly 5 hours to find the position of the car in front. Now, another hour had passed. There was still no one in the car in front. Could it be that all of them were in trouble? No one cared that they were tricked. They quickly acted according to Qin Xiu's instructions. They did not want to die here. Since no one came to rescue them, they could only save themselves. Chapter 1788. The female soldiers, Lu Yuan and Wei Jiayue, took the initiative to stand out. They followed Qin Xiu to the car in front to help. After some persuasion, the female soldiers no longer let the negative emotions caused by personal grievances affect the cooperation of the whole team. The snow shovels are in the car. Leave one person to stand guard and pay attention to the surrounding situation at all times, especially at the top of the mountain. Once you find that the snow is loose, immediately run to the Huanbao Road. Qin Xiu, who had been to the 4th hidden route, was not completely at ease leaving the other 5 female soldiers here. He was very careful to avoid any more accidents. Move the supplies from the car and put them in the Huanbao Road. If there is another avalanche, you can hide there and eat and wear until the rescue team arrives. He did not say some nice, comforting words to the female soldiers so that they would not be afraid. Instead, he very responsibly told them that as long as they stayed here, danger would always exist. He wanted them to be mentally prepared to face possible dangers with heightened vigilance. The female soldiers were all frightened by his words. The corners of their mouths tightened, and there was a faint trace of fear in their eyes. "Okay, sisters, let's get to work. Not for others, but for ourselves, we have to face it bravely. Hao Zhen, Wu Ziwei, Fu Hui, Ning Anwen, Li Fei. The 5 of you take turns to stand guard. Whoever is tired of shoveling the snow will stand guard. I guarantee that 4 people will shovel the snow and 1 will stand guard." Wei Jiayue calmly arranged. She had the longest military experience, so she had to take the lead at this time. With a female soldier who could take the lead, Qin Xiu's arrangement could be carried out faster. After helping them to carry the 2 bags of supplies from the car to a safe place, Qin Xiu left with Lu Yuan and Wei Jiayue. Will Lu Yuan and the others be in danger? The whole road is blocked by the snow. They have to climb over this pile of snow to get to the car in front. Fu Hui, who was the youngest in the army and the first to stand guard, looked at the figure walking toward the mountain-like pile of snow without looking back. There was a faint worry on her face. The female soldiers who took out a few foldable engineering shovels from the toolbox could not help but look forward. Who knew if there would be any danger? No wonder the male soldiers in our car left with Reporter Chin for a few hours. It turned out that they had climbed over the snow to find the car in front. Lu Yuan and Wei Jiayue are bold and have Reporter Chin to take care of them. They should be fine. All right, cut the crap. Hurry up and get to work. Reporter Chin just tied 2 ropes to the rear tire of our car. I reckon that the front car is quite close to us. Otherwise, the ropes wouldn't have been able to be dragged over. The 3 figures in front began to climb up the snow. The 5 female soldiers, whose hands and feet were cold because of the wind in the snow mountain, no longer stood still. They took out engineering shovels and began to shovel the snow onto the vehicle. Due to the lack of oxygen in the high altitude, they couldn't work too fast. If they worked too fast, their heart rate would increase and they would suffer from altitude sickness. No one wanted anything to happen to their bodies at this time, so they had to shovel the snow rhythmically. In the front, Qin Xiu was the first one to climb up the mountain-like snow. When he got out of the car to look for the car in front of him, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat, as it was his first time walking through the snow. The snow piled up into a mountain and was particularly steep. At that time, he followed the veteran in front of him and climbed less than 2 meters. When he glanced down at the small arc of snow, he was so frightened that his heart skipped a beat. By the time he had completely climbed down, even his knees were faintly weak. He only recovered after being supported by the veteran for a while. Chapter 1789. The third time he climbed the snow pile, he calmed down a lot. Walking in the front, he stopped every few steps and pulled the female soldier who was climbing with both hands and feet behind him. Step in my footprints. Relax your body. Only by breathing can you relax your eyes. It's better to be slow than fast. Qin Xiu, who often spoke, had a very elegant voice. Listening to him speak was like reading an ancient poem. He spoke slowly and unhurriedly. Lu Yuan couldn't help but look down. She was immediately frightened by the bottomless abyss at her feet and couldn't help but scream. Her sudden scream scared Wei Jiayue, who was at the back, and she also screamed. The 2 shrill screams scared the 5 female soldiers who were shoveling the snow behind them. They thought there was an accident in front of them. They were so scared that their lips turned pale. They looked forward in panic. Don't look down. Grab my hand. Qin Xiu didn't blame them. He was still scared after climbing the snow pile for the 3rd time. It was normal for them to be scared and scream when climbing the snow pile for the first time. Qin Xiu, who was a gentleman, wouldn't blame a lady. Instead, he grabbed Lu Yuan's hand and gave her a sense of security with the strength of a man. Keep your eyes on your feet. Don't look anywhere except your feet. When she was most scared, a pair of strong arms supported her. It was like a drowning person holding on to a piece of driftwood. She felt very safe physically and mentally. Lu Yuan, whose lips were trembling with fear, nodded in panic and said a few words. She grabbed Qin Xiu's arm tightly. Lu Yuan was a little surprised. She didn't expect this tall, thin, and handsome reporter to have some strength and be able to support her steadily. She whispered, "Thank you." Then she moved forward little by little. Qin Xiu was a diplomat, but the nature of his work didn't allow him to be a weak man. Although he looked thin, he exercised a lot in private. He was even a boxing coach, so it was normal for him to have some strength. After helping the 2 female soldiers to the side of the abyss where they couldn't look down, he waved to the back, indicating that everything was safe here. Qin Xiu didn't look back. He just made a gesture. Even though it was just a gesture, it showed how strict Qin Xiu was. When he crawled to the car in front, he would reach out and grab the 2 female soldiers who were screaming from time to time when they needed help the most. It only took him 20 minutes to crawl back to the car in front with the 2 female soldiers. The 2 female soldiers took advantage of the snow to see the situation of the carriage in front of them. They were so scared that they covered their mouths to prevent themselves from screaming. Too frightening, too frightening. The entire car was pushed out of the cliff, leaving only the front of the car dangerously on the road. The front tires were even crushed on the edge of the road. They knew that something had happened to the car in front, but they didn't expect it to be so dangerous. Save himself? How could he save himself in such a situation? The two female soldiers looked at reporter Cheen, who had brought them over with a panicked expression, and then looked at the veteran soldiers sent by 30 Lee Barracks to escort them. What should they do? 7 hours after they lost contact with the art troupe, a ray of white light suddenly shone from the top of the tall pile of snow. It happened to refract onto a pile of snow and was seen by one of the female soldiers who was shoveling snow into a vehicle. "Ah, we're here, we're here." The female art troupe trained their voices. When the ah sound came, Yi Qian, who was crawling at the front, heard it immediately. Chapter 1790. She stopped in her tracks and slowly retracted her body that was about to climb up. She carefully turned her head and said, "I can already hear their voices. It doesn't sound like they're injured. Their situation might be a lot better than we thought. They could still scream, so they didn't suffer from altitude sickness." The members of the Snowfield Brigade who were following behind also heard the female soldier screams. Their tense expressions suddenly relaxed. J5 let out a long sigh and said, "They ran into such a huge avalanche, but they're still fine. They're really lucky." That's right. It took them almost an hour and a half to climb up the snowy hill where the avalanche appeared. It was obvious how big and powerful the avalanche was this time. When the platoon leader of the military station heard the voice, the tension in his throat disappeared. He said to Yi Jian, "The closer you get to the target, the more careful you have to be. Step on the ground carefully, and then put your other foot on the ground when it's solid. If the snow under your feet loosens, don't panic. Quickly pull your feet back." He was supposed to be the one walking at the front, but the male soldiers were heavy and not agile enough. When he realized that he was stepping on a patch of loose snow, it was too late. He originally wanted to take the lead and walk slower, but the Liu brothers who joined the rescue team disagreed. They said to him, "Every second of rescue time is precious. We can't waste it on the road." They didn't even give him a chance to speak, so they directly pushed the only female soldier in the group forward. How could they let a female soldier walk in front of the most dangerous situation? How could a group of male soldiers do that? The female soldier didn't give him a chance to object. She took the rope and walked to the front without saying a word. They walked for almost an hour and a half. Along the way, he asked for a change of people several times, but the man who spoke like the instructor in their regiment smiled and said, it's fine. Let her get some practice. This kind of opportunity is hard to come by." He wanted to persuade the other Liu brothers to stand on his side, but no one said anything. They just smiled and looked at the female soldier walking in front of them. He really didn't understand how they interacted with each other. It was definitely not true that they didn't love their comrades. He could feel their love and care for the female soldier from their eyes and words, but he couldn't understand what they were doing. He had an indescribable feeling in his heart when he let a female soldier take the lead while braving the danger. J5, who was walking behind Yi Qian, pulled on the rope they were holding and said to Yi Qian, "Check the buckles on your waist again. We're not in a hurry since we're already in front. The closer we get to the end, the more stable we have to be." For nearly an hour and a half, the female soldier Yi Qian's performance was quite good. She was not afraid because she was walking in front, nor did she have the slightest intention of retreating. She kept leading the male soldiers forward and even turned her head to remind the male soldiers to watch their steps. Very good. Her fearless attitude in the face of danger was better than they had imagined. After the inspection, Yi Qian gave the J5 an OK sign. With the stars above her head and the white snow beneath her feet, she fearlessly walked towards the female soldier who was crying tears of joy. When the 5 female soldiers saw so many reinforcements arriving all of a sudden, they cried so hard that their eyes twitched. When Yi Qian walked over, Fu Hui, who was the youngest in the army and usually received the most care, immediately rushed into Yi Qian's arms. Chapter 1791. Yi Qian, who was very close to the female soldiers, wanted to untie the rope around his waist before comforting them. However, he did not expect that one of the female soldiers would jump at him. "I'll leave them to you, Yi Qian." At this moment, J5 reacted very quickly. He quickly untied the rope with his right hand and nimbly jumped to the side. He handed the 5 crying female soldiers to Yi Qian and said kindly, "You guys talk to her. If you have anything to say it to her. You guys will have something in common. Leave the rest to us male soldiers. You guys rest. Have a good rest. My comrade, stay with them. Just look at them and you'll know they're scared out of their wits. Comfort them well." He looked as if he was afraid that the female soldiers would jump at him, and he quickly ran away. His actions were fast, but his comrades from the Snowfield Brigade were just as fast. They did not have any experience in comforting crying female soldiers. They were all like rough men, who knew how to comfort the female soldiers. When they saw Yi Qian being hugged by a performing arts soldier and standing stiffly, oh my God, just looking at that posture made their scalps tingle. They would leave the matter of comforting the crying female soldiers to Yi Qian. Luckily, they had Yi Qian. Otherwise, they would have a lot to worry about. A group of fearless soldiers who did not even blink when bullets flew past them were helpless in the face of the wailing performing arts soldiers. They had no choice. They were a group of generals without an army. They did not have the ability to coax girls. Yi Qian, who was having a headache, finally untied the rope. Her hands and legs were a little stiff. She took a few deep breaths before she raised her hand and gently patted the female soldier who jumped into her arms. If you're too emotional, your breathing rate will increase and you will need to take in more oxygen. There's not enough oxygen in Mazadaban. If you continue crying, I'm afraid you'll have altitude sickness. In serious cases, you'll have chest tightness, tinnitus, difficulty breathing, and life-threatening complications. So calm down. You can go to the side and rest for a while. Leave the rest to us. As a science student, Yi Qian calmly comforted her and explained the possible consequences if she continued to be so agitated. Fu Hui, who was in her arms, burped loudly. She raised her head pitifully and looked at the female soldier who came to rescue her. "You must be a military doctor. Hurry up and take a look at me. My chest is a little tight now." Yi Qian did not push the female soldier away immediately. Her body was trembling. It was obvious how scared she was. "Your chest is tight because you cried too much just now. Also, wipe your tears away or they will freeze on your face." Even though the other 4 female soldiers were crying, Yi Qian accompanied them to the inner side of the ring road where the supplies were piled up. At this moment, they finally found their backbone and a sense of security. The range of the avalanche was too large, and there was also a snowstorm earlier, which caused the rescue time to be extended. "Now that we see that you are all fine, we are relieved." Yi Qian helped Fu Hui, who was gasping for oxygen, to sit down. She spoke very slowly and calmly to them. "There are a total of 20 people, and now there are only 5 of you. Can you tell me the situation? There should be 20 people, but there were only 5 people in front of them." Yi Qian glanced at the trucks discreetly. It was impossible for there to be only 5 people. There should be 10 people in each of the 2 trucks. There should be another 5 people. Where did the other 5 people go? She needed the 5 female soldiers in front of her to tell her. Chapter 1792. The 5 female soldiers inhaled oxygen and reported the current situation to Yi Qian. 2 minutes later, Yi Qian walked to the male soldiers who were investigating the situation nearby. 2 reporters, 12 cultural soldiers, 2 leaders of the rescue command, 2 motorized soldiers, and 2 veterans. A total of 20 people. There are 7 female soldiers, a reporter surnamed Qin, an automobile soldier, and a driver in 1 car. The 10 people in the car are all safe. The other 4 cultural soldiers, 2 men and 2 women, 2 leaders, 1 reporter, and 3 soldiers from 30 Mile Camp were in the front car. The accident happened to the front car. Half an hour ago, the reporter surnamed Qin came and left with 2 female soldiers. They have already found the front car. It's behind a pile of snow. We have to rush there immediately. When the squad leader of the military station heard this, his heart was in his throat. We have to hurry. We have to hurry. You stay with them. We'll go there immediately. Yi Qian shook his head. Squad leader, I have to go with you. The reporter surnamed Qin came back to take 2 female soldiers away. It's very likely that there's something that only female soldiers can help with. So, you're the only one who can stay to take care of them. I agree with your analysis and your point of view. Squad leader, you stay to take care of the female soldiers. Leave the rest to us. J5 made the decision. There was no way to change it. Li Jinyan bent down to lift the rope tied to the wheel. Then, he walked to the back of the car and picked up the shovel that was thrown into the snow. As if he thought of something, he jumped up and grabbed the end of the car with both hands. He looked up and saw the snow on the inside of the car. After he finished his inspection, he walked over and waited for J5 to finish speaking. The front car is in trouble. It's very likely that it was pushed out of the Tibetan line by the snow. We have to rush there as soon as possible. Then, he told them what he saw. What do you think of my speculation? Without Xia Jinyuan in the team, Li Jinyan was actually the team leader here. However, J5 had experience in highland travel. He knew that he wasn't good enough, so he kept silent. Keeping silent didn't mean that he didn't care about anything. As a commander, he would take control of the overall situation at the appropriate time. He wouldn't really become invisible. His words caused everyone's expression to change. No one thought that his analysis was just a conjecture or a guess, but it was very likely to be so. The 5 performing arts soldiers still needed to shovel the snow. This time, Li Jinyan, the class leader, the 3rd-rank soldier driving the car, and a soldier from the military station all stayed behind. They were the main force shoveling the snow to increase the weight of the car. Be careful. Before Yi Qian left, Li Jinyan bowed slightly and reminded him softly, listen to J5's arrangements, okay? Yes, you too. Yi Qian nodded gently. She knew why he had reminded her so, because there were still 2 leaders of the rescue team in front of the car. If something happened, it would be a little troublesome. Climbing over the steep snow that prevented them from reaching the front car, Yi Qian stepped on the footprints he left behind and steadily flipped over. A bright beam of light appeared on top of the accumulated snow without any warning, and Qin Xiu immediately caught it. His expression that was as heavy as water suddenly relaxed, and his line of sight looked towards the dangerous pile of snow. Then, the beam of light moved along with the figure. Then, another beam of light shone over and illuminated the figure in the first beam of light. Chapter 1793. Many years later, Qin Xiu could still remember that scene very clearly. Decades had passed, but every time he closed his eyes and recalled that day, that night, and that second, it seemed like it had happened yesterday. No matter how many years had passed, that figure stepping on the light still appeared so vividly in his mind. She walked out of the light and let him see her full of vitality. In the pitch-black surroundings, the huge, rugged, and ferocious mountain range, the slender figure with the light was like an ancient sword that broke out of the ground and rushed straight to the 9 heavens. With a snow-white light, it instantly split the darkness that surrounded them, allowing everyone to see the hope of survival. It was a slender figure, and at first glance, it was obvious that it belonged to a woman. She walked at the front of all the rescue soldiers. Her figure was strong and agile, like a fox gathering the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and she charmingly entered everyone's eyes. They're here! They're here! Reporter Qin, our brothers are here. The veteran said to Qin Xiu, then waved his arms vigorously and shouted loudly, Hey, brothers here, all of you come here. We're here. He turned on the searchlight that he was reluctant to use so that the army that came to rescue them would know where they were. 2 female soldiers who were about to climb into the carriage to check the situation inside saw several figures stepping on the light, and in that second, their eyes were filled with tears. Yi Qian flashed the searchlight 3 times in a row at them, indicating that they had already seen them. Although they were stepping on the existing footprints, Every step they took was especially careful. They were afraid that if the snow under their feet loosened, it would cause the whole area of snow to collapse again, and they would all slide into the depths of the cliff. The veteran said to Qin Xiu, "Reporter Qin, you go and help them. I'll shovel the snow here so that it'll be easier to rest later." He was used to the highland climate, so he still had to pay attention to Reporter Qin in the news department. He couldn't let his body take it. Qin Xiu motioned for the two female soldiers who were about to climb into the carriage to stand aside temporarily. Then he said to the driver who was sitting in the driver's seat and maintaining the weight of the carriage, "The rescue team is here. I'll go and help them first." The driver, who was awake and in good condition, nodded calmly and said, "Don't worry, we can still hold on for the time being." Although the carriage was suspended in the air, it did not tilt downwards. As long as the people in the carriage sat properly, there would not be any danger for the time being. Seeing the rescuers coming, Qin Xiu, who was relieved, quickly walked to the bottom of the snow slope and said to the figure who was about to go down, "Slow down. The snow below is a little loose. It's safer to step on the original footprints." Yi Qian raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard the familiar voice. She was quite familiar with this voice and even knew who it belonged to. Reporter Qin from the news department? When did Qin Xiu become a reporter? Wasn't he the youngest diplomat in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Ran to the northwest of the border and became a reporter? As a soldier, Yi Qian was keenly aware that Qin Xiu had used the identity of a reporter to hide his true identity. It must have been to make things easier for him. It took Yi Qian 10 minutes to climb over the slope formed by snow. She stepped out and jumped down lightly. At the same time, she firmly grabbed Qin Xiu's arm with one hand. When her feet touched the ground, she finally stopped feeling as if she was stepping on clouds. Even her heart calmed down a lot. "Thank you for your hard work." Qin Xiu used his other hand to grab Yi Qian's arm. This was a female soldier who was brave enough to join the rescue operation. "It's a little slippery under the ice. Be careful." Chapter 1794. He didn't immediately recognize Yi Qian. It wasn't until Yi Qian said, "Thank you. I'm sorry we're late." Qin Xiu couldn't hide the astonishment on his face. He could tell that the figure coming out of the light was a female soldier. Standing in the middle of the huge, craggy mountain, she gave him a unique and cold and arrogant visual impression. All of a sudden, the image fiercely crashed into his heart, making his mind tremble. They had never met before, but his heart trembled. This was something he had never experienced before. Then, her voice suddenly came. It was so familiar. It was so familiar that he knew who she was even before she finished speaking. Walking out of the light, splitting the darkness apart. It was so sudden that it knocked on his heart. "Yi Qian," he said in a low voice. His elegant voice had a touch of imperceptible gentleness. "Why are you here?" So it was her. She was the girl he had first met in the southern province that year. Later, she was the one who had led him to his uncle's office with a poor sense of direction. Later on, she had accompanied the leader to Pakistan for a visit. Because of the staff's mistake, they had only prepared one set of uniform for her. When he found out, he had wanted to put in a few good words for the staff. At that time, he had told her, "Preparing an extra set is a responsibility for your work." The smart girl had immediately understood and stopped talking. Now that he had met her again when he needed help the most, even if his heart trembled, he accepted it calmly. Qin Xiu was an outstanding man who would not make things difficult for himself. Since he was young, there had never been anything that would make things difficult for him. Seeing her smiling at him, there was only tenacity between her eyebrows. There was no trace of timidness on her delicate face. The smile on his elegant and beautiful face deepened. The feeling of knocking on the door of his heart was so wonderful that he really couldn't bear to reject it. Especially Yi Qian, a girl he had an affinity with. The veteran who had shoveled snow all the way here walked over. He didn't hear Qin Xiu's low voice. He walked over and smiled brightly at Yi Qian. "Thank you for your hard work, brother. You came quickly. There weren't any delays on the way, right? I thought you'd arrive tomorrow at the earliest. Who knew that you'd arrive in less than 10 hours? Thank you for your hard work. Third grade sergeant, 17 years in the Army, hidden soldiers. I'm reporter Chin from the news department. Suppressing his surprise, Chin Xiu immediately introduced him to Yi Qian. At the same time, he told Yi Qian about his current identity so that Yi Qian, who knew his true identity, wouldn't reveal it. They were pressed for time. Once everyone was gathered, they would have to start the rescue operation immediately. Therefore, they had to speak quickly. When Yi Qian heard this, he lightly nodded in understanding. Earlier, she had guessed that Chin Xiu might be hiding his true identity to make it easier for him to do things. Now, she was even more certain. He was afraid that she would accidentally let it slip, so he took the initiative to introduce himself as a reporter. Seeing this, Chin Xiu couldn't help but smile. She was a very smart girl who could always make people smile involuntarily. This was an open-minded Tibetan soldier, and also a genuine Tibetan. His Mandarin was a little stiff, and there was also a mixture of different dialects, which made people feel happy listening to him. Looking at this Tibetan soldier who wasn't affected by the avalanche and was instead grateful, Yi Qian, who was in awe, saluted him. You're the ones who have worked hard. I'm very sorry that we're late. Even the regiment commander in the Army would call a third-grade sergeant old squad leader. Yi Qian hadn't even been in the Army for a year, so he couldn't be rude. Chapter 1795. Only then did Song Bing realize that the person standing in front of him wasn't his brother, but a female soldier. Oh, so it's a female comrade. Ha, not late, not late. But you're definitely not a military doctor from the military station. I haven't heard your voice before. Did you just get here? The veteran who had been on the Tibetan line for more than 10 years could tell from her voice that she wasn't a military doctor from the military station. From 30 Miles Barracks to Shunxianbei Outpost, there was no military doctor that he didn't know. As long as he opened his mouth, he would know who was in which military station. Yi Qian smiled and said, I'm not a military doctor. I just joined a rescue team temporarily. Sorry to trouble you. 30 Miles Barracks is far from us. There aren't many people in the military station. You just happened to meet us, so I can only ask for your help. Songbing was good at talking. Although his Mandarin wasn't very good, it didn't affect their communication at all. After a few words, J5 and the others got out of the car one by one. Under the light of the lights, Songbing could tell that these brothers weren't from any military station. He didn't need to ask for confirmation. He could tell just by looking at their skin color. The situation in the car is temporarily unknown. It's been 7 hours since the accident happened. So far, we haven't heard any movement in the car. The driver sitting in the car said in a low voice. His dark purple face was full of worry. After so long, there was still no movement. He was really worried that the people in the car had been thrown out. Chin Xiu stood beside Yi Qian the whole time and said softly, There's been no movement for 7 hours. I'm starting to suspect that they've all been thrown out of the car. But it's also possible that the veterans in the car ordered them to stay put for the time being and wait until dawn. There are also 10 people in the car in front. 30 Miles Barracks had arranged for an experienced driver and 2 veterans who often went on the Tibetan line. If they weren't thrown out of the car, then they were temporarily comforted by the veterans, or they were still unconscious. Fainting for 7 hours wasn't very likely. Lu Yuan and Wei Jiayue immediately relaxed. Previously, reporter Chin had asked them to hold the edge of the car so that the whole car could be moved to the inside of the car to observe the situation. They had nodded because they had no choice but to do so in a situation where there was no rescue. Now, there were several rescue personnel, including a female soldier, so they didn't need to climb into the car to observe the situation. We need to confirm if the rear panel of the carriage is loose or damaged before we drag the entire carriage up. In the plan to hide the soldiers, there was still a need for them to climb into the carriages for inspection. The 2 female soldiers who had just heaved a sigh of relief were now on tenterhooks again. It couldn't be them again, right? His gaze fell on the female soldier who came with the male soldier. If someone really had to go up, they would probably let this female soldier go. Yi Qian could not ignore the fearful gazes that swept past him from time to time. Both J5 and Chin Xiu thought they should send people to check the carriage first. Before that, Qin Xiu planned to let the two female soldiers take the risk. Yi Qian guessed why the two female soldiers were so scared. When the two of them carefully looked over again, Yi Qian looked up and gave them a reassuring smile, telling them not to think too much and to leave the rescue to them. Looking at their pale faces and frozen limbs, it was already pretty good that they could still maintain a bit of calmness to save themselves after suffering such a great shock. Chapter 1796. Lu Yuan didn't expect to be caught looking at them. She hurriedly revealed an embarrassed smile. When Yi Qian stopped looking at her, she whispered to Wei Jia, who was also embarrassed, "Why do I feel like that female soldier seems to know that we are afraid of climbing into the carriage? Why else would she smile at us? She must have found out, so she smiled at us and told us to relax." Wei Jia lowered her head as she spoke. She was extremely cold, so she tightened her thick winter clothing. She deliberately avoided Yi Qian's gaze and turned her body slightly. "Don't be too embarrassing. We have to agree to whatever they want us to do later. Trust me, with them around, they definitely won't let us do dangerous work." They were all female soldiers, so they couldn't be too embarrassing. No one paid attention to what they were whispering to each other. They gathered together to quickly discuss the best rescue plan. While shoveling the snow, rescue them at the same time. When the ice on the road has been removed, if there are still people trapped in the carriage, start the tow truck. In less than 2 minutes, the best rescue plan was finalized. Originally, Qin Xiu and the Tibetan soldiers had discussed picking up the people in the carriages one by one. Now, they maintained his rescue plan and sped up the shovel truck so that the tow truck could start dragging the carriage in front back onto the road. However, because the two carriages were separated by a small mountain of snow, the safest method was to first pick up the people trapped in the carriages one by one and then carry out the towing operation. However, even if they rescued the people one by one before towing the carriages, they still had to check the situation in the carriages first. Only the light and agile female soldiers were suitable for the male soldiers' weight. There was no need for the two artistic women to take the risk. J5 directly said to Yi Qian, "You are light. Fasten the rope around your waist. We will pull you. Climb over the roof of the carriage and enter the carriage to check the situation." Just as Wei Jus said, the rescue team had already arrived. How could they let the two female soldiers who had been trapped for 7 hours under -20 to -30 degrees Celsius enter the carriage? After fastening the rope around his waist and putting on a sturdy rescue rope, Yi Qian gave an okay sign to his comrades. Without any fear, he placed his hands on the top of the carriage and climbed up easily. The driver in the car said, "If the car shakes, I will tell you immediately. Don't hesitate. Get out of the car immediately." So far, there was no movement in the cabin. The glass in the cabin was frozen. Otherwise, he could have used the searchlight to observe the situation in the cabin. There was no need for the female soldiers to take the risk. "Don't worry, we're here." Longhawk and Sparrowhawk stepped on the bumper in front of the car to maintain the stability of the car and prevent it from tilting due to excessive weight. Even if he had many comrades, he still needed to have the courage to go and check out the situation in a carriage that was suspended in the air as if it would fall into a bottomless abyss in the next second. Lu Yuan thought that she was famous for her boldness in the regiment. However, when she saw the female soldier, whose eyebrows and eyes were exceptionally exquisite, climb up, she immediately raised her hand to cover her eyes, not daring to look directly at her. Although Wei Jia didn't cover her eyes, she couldn't help but squint her eyes. She didn't dare to look directly at him. In less than a minute, she had climbed up to the roof of the carriage. She turned her head and said to the male soldier behind her, "Everything is normal. Loosen the rope." In order to ensure Yi Qian's safety, her comrades in the Snowfield Brigade didn't directly let Yi Qian pull the rope. Instead, they had to loosen the rope a little so that she could climb up a little. This was to prevent them from immediately pulling Yi Qian back if the carriage really fell. Chapter 1797. Loosen the rope. Loosen the rope. Long Eagle, who was staring at Yi Qian's figure, spoke without turning back. J5 and the others immediately loosened the rope a little to allow Yi Qian to move forward. A soft sound came from the top of the carriage, as if an extremely light animal was walking slowly on top. The carriage, which had been very stable all this time, trembled slightly, startling the people lying in the carriage. Their pupils shrank rapidly. "Is it a snow leopard?" someone asked in a hoarse voice. It used to be a delicate voice, but now was trembling like the wind. She asked the soldier beside her in horror, "Is there a snow leopard here?" Mazadaban was a huge natural wildlife park. The common large animals were wild yaks, Tibetan antelopes, wolves, snow leopards, and so on. Only wolves and leopards would appear at night, and when wolves appeared, they would usually be able to hear wolf howls. Now that the surroundings were extremely quiet and there were no wolf howls, they guessed that it might be a snow leopard. "It's possible. Don't move, continue to lie down. I'll knock on the glass again to see if the driver has woken up." The person sitting in the innermost part was the rescue team leader. They were all experienced in entering and exiting Tibet, so when they woke up and found the carriage hanging on the cliff, they would immediately remind them to maintain their original posture and not move to avoid affecting the balance of the carriage. The rescue team leader, who was in the innermost part, carefully raised his hand, picked up the dagger that he always carried, and gently knocked on the thick ice glass again. He did not dare to use too much force. Previously, when he used a little force, he could feel the carriage falling backward, which scared everyone in the carriage and made them break out in a cold sweat. It was difficult for the driver to hear the sound of the dagger knocking on the thick ice. Moreover, he was leaning against the steering wheel, so it was even more impossible for him to hear anything. The rescue team leader knocked a few times, and suddenly the carriage shook violently, startling a few sleeping soldiers awake. "Don't move! Don't move!" The Tibetan soldier reminded the two male soldiers from the Arts and Crafts Regiment who were awakened. He felt the female soldier beside him was so nervous that she was trembling all over. He could not help but comfort her in a low voice. "It's okay. It's okay. We've endured for 7 hours. It'll be fine if we endure until dawn. The people at the military station must have cleared the road. We'll be out of danger tomorrow. Mamin, don't move. Stay by Brother Gonga's side." A female soldier who was trapped close to the rear of the carriage said in a low voice. Her hands were tightly gripping the iron legs of the carriage. The hair on her forehead was frozen because of her sweat. In the entire carriage, she was the closest to the rear of the carriage. Fortunately, the entire carriage was flung out horizontally. She hit the other side of the carriage and slammed back into the carriage. Only then did she avoid being flung out of the carriage. "Jai, don't say anything. Hold on tight." Ma Min's voice was hoarse from crying as she reminded her comrades. She, who was also lying in the cold carriage, felt so cold that there was no warmth in her heart. When she spoke, her tone was particularly stiff. "There's movement above. It might be the snow leopard." "Snow leopard?" Du Jai was shocked. Her pupils suddenly contracted, and her teeth couldn't help but chatter. "Not necessarily. It could also be the person who saved us. Leader, please don't knock on a glass first. Listen for any sounds. How are our instructors doing? Do you feel better?" "I'm fine. Jai, don't talk too much. Ma Min is right. You're in the most danger now." One of the rescue team's instructors spoke in a low voice. When he was flung out of the carriage, his right arm had slammed into the folding seat. Even now, it was still very painful. It was very likely that his arm was fractured. Chapter 1798. The wind and the cliff whistled. Yi Jian, who was crawling on all fours, didn't hear the voices in the carriage. She moved bit by bit. Everyone could only see her figure from the searchlights on both sides. Every time she crawled, the carriage would make a slight trembling sound, which made everyone who was standing on the spot nervous. "Crawl slowly. Focus on spreading out. You must be steady," Zongbing reminded her occasionally. He was naturally afraid that the carriage would lose balance and cause everyone to fall off the cliff. Yi Qian nodded gently. She took a deep breath and inched towards the edge of the carriage. The carriage's wheels made a creaking sound. Even though the sound was very soft, it was exceptionally clear to the ears. Hearing such a sound made one's heart skip a few beats. "I don't dare to look." Lu Yuan raised her hand and said in a trembling voice. She turned her back to the carriage and covered her ears, afraid that she would hear something bad. Wei Jieyue stood for a while longer. She watched as the female soldier, who was much stronger than them, approached the edge of the carriage. She pursed her lips and silently turned around. She's already moved to the edge. Half of her head is out of the carriage. As she spoke softly, she heard Lu Yuan take a deep breath. She was shocked by the female soldier's courage. It was the first time they had seen a female soldier who wasn't afraid of sacrificing herself. The sky was dotted with cold stars. The north wind whistled along the way. It blew from the mountains that had stood tall for countless years. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were passing through. It made the hearts of the people who were walking tremble. The members of the Snowfield Brigade were used to marching on a snowy night in the Highlands. Every year, they would have marching training. They would set off at dawn and walk until dawn the next day. They would only take a short break before setting off again. This time, the patrol plane even sent them to the Kuta military station. When the station found out that they were on a rescue mission, they were so happy that they immediately sent a truck. After waiting for 3 hours, they jumped onto the truck. They didn't need a car to guide them. Xia Jinyuan drove them directly to Mazadaban. Only our Q King would dare to drive at this speed, and only we would dare to sit in it. Han Jing, whose body was so bumpy that he looked like he was sitting on a spring, shook his head as he spoke. He maintained an inexplicable smile as he communicated with his comrades. G3 glanced at him a few times. Every time he wanted to ask him why he was smiling so smugly, he would patiently endure it when he saw Z7's look of waiting for him to ask. The strange smile on Z7's face started when Q King found out about the name list of the members of the Arts and Craft Department. In that case, the reason for his infuriating smile was because of this name list. Could it be that there was a female soldier he liked in the Arts and Crafts Regiment? Was that why he was laughing the whole way? This was a possibility. As such, G3 simply stopped asking. He was the only one in the entire car who had confirmed their relationship and was planning to get married next year. The rest were all single. Q King did not choose anyone who was married or had a partner. Originally, he would not have chosen anyone. It was only because his driving skills were not bad that he was chosen. Not only was Han Jing trying to hold back his laughter, he was even humming a song. The more he looked, the more he felt like he was meeting his beloved girl. G3 nudged V8's shoulder and lifted his chin in Han Jing's direction. He whispered, "I'm afraid there's someone he knows in the Arts and Craft Department." The smile on his face never stopped. Chapter 1799. He's someone who has girlfriends everywhere. He's already dated more than 10 girls, so it's not strange that he knows someone in the art troupe. V8 did not really want to discuss such a sad topic. Other people dated more than 10 girls, but he broke up with them in less than half a year. So far, he was still single. The difference in the number of girls he dated was too great, so he did not want to continue talking about it. Han Jing was secretly happy to be alone. From time to time, he would knock on the glass and mouth to T6, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. Tell Q King not to be too anxious. Qing Niao might have already arrived by now. She might even have rescued the people from the art troupe. Tell him to calm down, don't be anxious. T6 conveyed his words to Xia Jinyuan, who had a serious expression and was focused on driving. Z7 is right. Q King, you're driving a little too fast. The ice will get worse at night. It might not be safe even if the wheels are equipped with ice teeth. He had to drive faster because there was a rather troublesome woman in the art troupe. The handsome and serious Xia Jinyuan secretly gritted his teeth. Du Jiai. This woman was born with a glib tongue. She had the ability to turn white into black and black into white. One sentence from her had many hidden meanings. If someone offended her, this woman would smile sweetly and say that it was fine and she would not be calculative. But in the next moment, she would quietly make things difficult for that person until he or she would never be able to turn over a new leaf. She was capable and ambitious. She was a person who would seek revenge. However, he really did not dare to compliment her true nature. Now that something had happened and she had to wait for 6 to 7 hours, even if the rescue personnel risked their lives to rush over, based on her personality, she would definitely report it to the higher-ups after the incident. In the report, she would definitely sincerely thank the rescue personnel who participated in the rescue. Then, she would list a series of shortcomings that needed improvement and directly punish a large number of people. If he did not know about this, and Yi Qian was not involved, then he would not care so much. Now that he knew about this matter, and Yi Qian was involved, he had to step in and teach her a lesson. He had to teach this woman a lesson. She should not think that she was made of jade, and that she was the most noble person in the world. Xia Jinyuan stepped on the accelerator a little more and said to V8 in a low voice, "There's a very troublesome person in the art troupe. She doesn't care about the lives of others, but she's very protective of her own life. The rescuers risked their lives to save her, but in the end, they still have to take the risk of being punished by her. I have to go over and take care of the situation. I don't want to get Qing Miao involved." As soon as he said this, V8's eyes immediately turned cold. "Biting the hand that feeds you. That's right. That's the guy." Xia Jinyuan smirked coldly. This guy just happened to have the surname Du. The Du family and family Xia had never been on good terms, but they had a close relationship with the former Mrs. Xia who abandoned her husband and children in pursuit of love. Yi Qian did not expect to rescue a snake beauty. She climbed into the car and turned on the lights. When she lowered her head and looked into the car, the lights on the windbreaker had shone into the car first. Then, she heard countless voices coming from the car. The clearest sound was a woman's delicate voice coming from below her head. "Everyone is here. Our instructor's arm is fractured. Please think of a way to save our instructor first." This was the first time Yi Qian and Du Jiai met. Before they even met, Yi Qian could already tell that Du Jiai was a difficult person to get along with. Chapter 1800. Although her voice was delicate, there was a hint of questioning in it. She didn't even have the basic courtesy, as if everything that others did was natural. Having lived 2 lives, Yi Qian's mind was naturally sharper than others. In addition, she had lived carefully in the eyes of others in her previous life. She could distinguish what kind of words others said and what kind of tone they used. Even though this trapped female soldier had taken the initiative to ask to save the instructor who needed saving the most, Yi Qian could tell from her faint impatience that this was a female soldier who knew how to express herself. Is it true that other than the instructor who has a suspected fracture, the rest of the people don't have any obvious external injuries or pain? Yi Qian didn't answer her question, but confirmed it again. She needed to know the exact situation in the carriage, so much so that she needed to know everyone's condition. Du Jiai, who had lost all feeling in her hands, began to call out names on instinct. She said, "Instructor, when I call out a person's name, I ask him to tell the rescue team outside if he has any problems. This way, the people outside can confirm that we are fine, so that they can start the rescue as soon as possible." When Yi Qian heard this, her brows furrowed slightly. This female soldier's words were really unpleasant to hear. Her words were sarcastic, and there was a hidden meaning behind them. Her rough words didn't sound like there was a problem, but when you thought about it carefully, there was a big problem. The situation was urgent. The carriage was suspended in the air, there was no telling if there would be more avalanches, and the instructor was injured. Everyone desperately wanted to be rescued, but the rescue team didn't do it immediately. They had to call out names to confirm everyone's condition. What kind of rescue was this? This was called delaying. When she said this, everyone in the carriage, including the Tibetan soldiers, became serious. They already had some complaints about Yi Qian. If Yi Qian was really an ordinary female soldier, they might have to thank her for her thoughtfulness. As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Qian, whose eyes were cold, said loudly, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. I just need to know if anyone is in obvious pain, external injuries, or bleeding so that we can cooperate to rescue the injured first." This explanation made everyone in the carriage feel better. Naturally, they had to cooperate. "I'm sorry, I misunderstood." Other than our instructor, who was seriously injured, the rest of them didn't feel any severe pain or bleed. It was just that when the carriage was thrown out, everyone was knocked out for a few hours. "I'm Du Jiai, a female soldier from the Arts and Crafts Regiment. Thank you for your hard work." Du Jiai immediately apologized and very cooperatively summarized the situation in the carriage in one sentence. The art troops instructor said, "That's right. Other than me, the rest are only lightly injured. I am Gao Hong, the instructor of the Arts and Crafts Regiment. Be careful and don't rush." The female soldier outside was right. They had to cooperate with each other. In the face of Du Jiai's apology, Yi Qian curled his lips, his eyes cold. J5 and the others knew that other than the instructor who was injured, the rest of the people in the carriage were fine. They all let out a sigh of relief. The next step was to get the people trapped in the carriage out one by one. The front wheel was blocked by rocks. Next, a sturdy climbing rope was tied to the wheel. The other end of the rope was tied to a construction shovel taken out from the toolbox. Next, the shovel was placed horizontally behind two huge rocks that had been blown out by the snow to create a resistance force. All the preparations were in progress. 5 minutes later, the instructor was slowly pulled out from the trembling carriage. Chapter 1801. The carriage was shaking so much that it made creaking noises. The entire carriage was shaking up and down. Yi Qian had been lying on the roof of the carriage the whole time. She pulled the rope tightly with both hands and slid the wheels so that the instructor could slowly pull her up to the roof of the carriage. "I'll slowly back up. You can slowly crawl forward like me." At this moment, the usually calm Yi Qian was slowly being pulled up by the rope as the instructor held onto the edge of the carriage with both hands. There were beads of sweat on her forehead. As she spoke to the instructor, she slowly moved backwards with her arms outstretched. The instructor's arm was fractured, so her movements were inevitably restricted. Fortunately, there were comrades from the Snowfield Brigade pulling the rope from the front of the carriage. The instructor only needed to maintain her posture like Yi Qian. There was a layer of ice on the carriage. As Yi Qian moved forward and backward, she smoothed the surface of the ice a little. The slippery ice reduced the resistance and sped up the instructor's progress. "Steady, steady. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more." Yi Qian retreated to the junction between the carriage and the front of the carriage. She pulled her arms back and tightened the rope around the instructor. After working together with her comrades for about 15 minutes, they finally succeeded in rescuing the first trapped person. As long as they successfully rescued the first person, it meant that this method worked. The creaking noises stopped when the instructor got out of the carriage. The shaking of the carriage also returned to normal. The J5 quickly laid on the ice to check if the front wheels showed any signs of slipping. After looking carefully, she stood up and said happily to Yi Qian, "The wheels are not slipping. We can enter the second rescue round." What they feared the most was that the wheels would slide off the cliff during the rescue. Even if they used a rock to hold them back, they still couldn't be at ease. Now that they had rescued the injured and the wheels were still in their original state, it was undoubtedly good news. Yi Qian, who was lying on the ground, let out a sigh of relief. She didn't stand up, but she gave the J5 an OK sign, indicating that they could enter the second rescue round. "Good job." The old Tibetan soldier who was supporting the instructor gave Yi Qian a thumbs up and praised loudly. "You are a female soldier that we admire. You are amazing." "Very, very good." Qin Xiao, who was standing on top of a pile of snow, looked at the slender figure who had successfully rescued Instructor Gao from the Arts and Crafts Regiment. A faint smile appeared on his elegant and handsome face. Every time he saw her full of sunshine and fearless. She was very brave, but she always knew how to act according to her capabilities. A girl who knew how to act according to her capabilities would know how to move forward. He wouldn't go overboard either, just like how a glass of water wouldn't be filled to the brim. He had to grasp the scale just right. When the water was full, the moon would overflow, and when the moon was full, it it would be a loss. This girl, who should be in her first year of university, seemed to understand this principle quite well. Therefore, she and Du Jia went back and forth, knowing when to stop. From the capital to the northwest of the border, Du Jia's way of dealing with things had surprised him. Madame Qin had said that she was a good wife for her husband and children, and had urged him to take good care of her and try to make some progress. He took Madame Qin's words to heart. For people like them, they didn't marry the person they loved, but a wife who would be helpful to the whole family. Along the way, her calm and collected demeanor had made those dissatisfied soldiers suffer losses again and again. It was as if they had to suffer in silence, unable to voice out their bitterness. She had only used a few taels to achieve 1,000 caddies, and the leaders of the rescue construction approved of her. They had criticized the few female soldiers who didn't get along with Du Jia several times. Chapter 1802. From this, he could see Du Jia's methods. Just like what Mrs. Qin said, the second daughter of the Du family was indeed suitable to be a wife. But in the end, such a capable person met Yi Qian and was suppressed with just a few words. This was the first time he heard her take the initiative to apologize and admit her mistake in front of the leader. From this, it could be seen that not only was Yi Qian meticulous, but he was also very strict. He could immediately tell that Du Jia's words, which seemed to be helping her, were actually secretly trying to trip her up. When she heard Du Jia's apology, she didn't say anything like it's okay. Instead, she just smiled and remained silent. This was to tell Du Jia that she didn't want to make a fuss about it. So please behave yourself. Using silence to reply was far more effective in intimidating Du Jia than speaking. It couldn't be denied that this was a girl with a pure heart and knew how to protect herself. Du Jia wanted to take the opportunity to step on her and gain a good impression in front of the leader, but this move was useless. Pull it tight. Pull it up, pull it up. The J5's voice came from the front. They were now starting to rescue the second trapped art troop soldier. Men were heavy to begin with, so when the art troop soldier's hands grabbed onto the carriage, he could see the entire carriage sink. The J5 was so shocked that he repeatedly ordered the male soldier to pull the rope harder. Qin Xiu, whose heart sank along with the carriage, locked his gaze on Yi Qian even more tightly. His thin lips, which had always held a gentle smile, were pursed into a straight line, exuding a coldness comparable to frost. His gaze was locked on Yi Qian, but he didn't realize that the danger he was facing was no less than Yi Qian. The pile of snow that Qin Xiu was standing on was the pile of snow that everyone was trembling with fear when they walked past it. He was in charge of the front carriage. Once the carriage in front started to slide, he would immediately tell the carriage behind to retreat and pull the front carriage tightly. Standing here was equivalent to standing on the edge of a cliff. His toes were less than 10 centimeters away from the edge. You will be safe. Seeing that she had successfully rescued the male soldier, Qin Xiu, who had a faint smile in his eyes, calmly retracted his gaze. He chuckled softly and said, "A smart girl who knows when to advance and retreat will always have better luck than others." Finally, the rumbling sound of the car starting could be heard from the quiet back of the car. The temperature was so low that the hidden soldiers in the car had to start the car several times before it started. Listening to the sound of the motor in the wind, it inexplicably gave people a sense of security. The back of the car had already shoveled nearly half of the snow. Li Jinyan glanced at the tall figure standing at the top of the pile of snow and sped up his shoveling speed, throwing the snow into the car shovel by shovel. After 40 minutes of shoveling snow, he and a few soldiers from a military station had already shoveled out a path more than 3 meters long for the rear cars. As long as the front cars needed to be towed by the rear cars, they could immediately retreat. Time flew by. Xia Jinyuan asked V8 again what time it was. Only then did he realize that he had already been driving for more than 2 hours. When the car climbed onto a high slope, V8 pointed ahead and shouted, "Q King, there's light up ahead. We're almost there." They were indeed almost there. After parting with Yi Qian for nearly 10 hours, they could finally meet up on the Tibetan route in Mazadaban. Similarly, Chinchou also saw the sound of a car's high beam flashing by on a high slope in the distance. The military station had sent reinforcements. The rescue operation was almost at the end. Once the last trapped soldier was rescued, the rescue operation would end. At this point, reinforcements wouldn't be of much use. Most of them were shoveling away the snow from the broken Tibetan route and restoring the route to normal. Chapter 1803. In a situation where communication was inconvenient, the military station only knew that 20 people had lost contact and did not know the rescue results. They continuously sent reinforcements to increase the number of reinforcements to ensure safety. The communication base station and satellite base station in the northwest of the border had entered the final phase of construction. By June, the various military stations will be able to maintain communication through the satellite base station, even if there was a snowstorm. Once the truck driving along the Tibetan line had an accident, it could also immediately contact the various military stations through the satellite phone in the truck to request for help. The lives of the soldiers at the northwest border of our country had always been perfect. Even the barracks had been modified several times so that the soldiers who came back from patrolling and sentry duty would not suffer from a cold. Everything would be fine. As our country's national strength improved and our military strength strengthened, everything here would be fine. Chinchou flashed his headlights 3 times in a row at the truck driving from afar. If the soldier sitting in the passenger seat saw it, he would quickly respond by flashing his headlights 3 times in a row as well. There's someone standing on top of the truck. His position happens to be on the ring road of the Tibetan line, so it's impossible for there to be high ground. The initial judgment is that the high ground is a pile of snow caused by an avalanche. V8 quickly analyzed the situation. At the same time, the truck's headlights flashed 3 times. Xia Jinyuan did not say a word. He only nodded slightly to indicate his response. His lover was not far ahead. As for him, no matter how anxious he was, he could not speed up. They were now going downhill. No matter how fast he drove, he was afraid that the truck would drive straight down the cliff. The soldier on the truck saw him. Chinchou, who was about to look away, suddenly heard a miserable scream coming from the truck. His fingers trembled in shock as he quickly turned his head to look. The truck was sinking. Drive, drive. The moment J5, whose expression changed drastically, opened his mouth, Chinchou, who had been paying attention to the situation, had already gestured to the truck behind. The Tibetan soldier, who had been watching Chinchou closely, saw this and shouted at the driver, "Drive, drive." The truck soldier, who was tense and ready, changed gears to the brake. The entire process was completed in 3 seconds. The truck's wheels rolled over the gravel road, and with a loud boom, the truck drove several meters away. Yi Qian gripped the truck's pole tightly and shouted at the last 2 female soldiers, "Hold on tight. Don't panic." The car shook. The driver in front held the steering wheel tightly, stepped on the accelerator, and drove the car that was falling down the cliff to the side of the road. Ice had been added to the wheels. With a few loud clangs, the sharp ice cubes fell out of the gaps between the wheels. The members of the Snowfield Brigade glared at Yi Qian angrily and shouted, "Hold on tight. If anything goes wrong, let go immediately." Zhang Bing yelled at the driver, "Get ready to jump out of the car at any time. Do you understand?" The door of the driver's seat was half open. Once it was necessary to abandon the car, the driver could immediately jump out of the car. Lu Yuan and Wei Jiyue were frightened and immediately hugged each other. They also wanted to scream, but they didn't dare to. The female soldiers who were still in the carriage didn't scream in fright, so they shouldn't cause trouble. The preparation work was done very well, and they cooperated very well with each other. The half-tilted carriages were adjusted again as the front of the carriages were pulled up. At the same time, the carriages that were originally suspended in the air were pulled up by about 30 centimeters. Due to the fact that the rear car was not being towed vertically, there was no way to drag the entire car up. If they continued to drag it, the front car would be forcefully twisted to the side of the cliff, which would make it easier for the entire car to fall off the cliff. Chapter 1804. In the end, there was such a thrilling scene. The Special Forces members of the Shuiyu team were so shocked that they broke out in cold sweat. If Yiqian had confessed right here, they wouldn't care what the consequences were. They would never forgive themselves for the rest of their lives. Qin Xiu looked at the upright carriage. His heart was beating wildly, and he couldn't help but close his eyes and cover his chest. When he opened his eyes again, he looked down at his feet. The two ropes that could be seen had sunk deep into the snow after being dragged by the rear carriage. It wasn't safe for him to stay here. He needed to go down. The Tibetan soldier below looked up and shouted at Qin Xiu, who was standing high up. "Reporter Qin, come down quickly. It's not safe for you. Come down quickly." When the ropes sunk into the snow, it was equivalent to cutting the accumulated snow in half. If the upper layer of snow fell down, the entire layer of snow would fall down with it. Qin Xiu, who was standing on top, would fall down the cliff with the falling snow. Qin Xiu responded and carefully stepped on the snow as he slowly descended. He had only taken a few steps when the place where he had been standing was covered by a large piece of snow. Then, at least 3 square meters of snow fell directly to the cliff. Qin Xiu, who heard the sound behind him, pursed his lips. He didn't look back and quicken his pace to rush down. The Tibetan soldier saw the snow above him peeling off layer by layer and sinking down. The snow piled up to the mountain was falling down in large chunks. Even though he was a veteran who had been on the Tibetan line for 17 years, he was scared out of his wits. Fortunately, Reporter Qin wasn't a coward. He knew the situation behind him wasn't right, so he didn't look back and just rushed down. Qin Xiu, who was rushing down, was in a sorry state. When the snow under his feet loosened, he threw himself forward. He started with a more ferocious posture, like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. Then, he ended with prostrating himself on the ground and fell down hard. Although his posture wasn't very elegant, Qin Xiu didn't care too much when he saw the small avalanche on the originally tightly piled up snow. His life was more important. When the people in the rear saw that the accumulated snow had caused another avalanche, the female soldiers were so scared that their faces turned ashen, while the male soldiers were slightly calmer. "Reporter Qin, are you all right?" Fu Hui was so scared that her knees went weak. She stuttered as she spoke. Li Jinyan looked at the collapsed pile of snow. The original cold June, Yin became colder and colder. The people standing on it should have some skills. Otherwise, how dare they stand in the most dangerous place? She had to have the confidence to stand up there. As for whether something would happen, he said to the 5 female soldiers who were as frightened as birds, "There's a 50-50 chance that something would happen or nothing would happen." When the female soldiers heard this, tears came out of their eyes. Li Jinyan glanced at him and then walked away. She had to see for herself to know whether or not something was wrong. What was the use of crying? Qin Xiu didn't know that he had caused the 5 female soldiers to cry for no reason. He pulled the rope tightly together with the male soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade. He had to pull it tighter. He couldn't let the girls on the carriage be in any danger. It was easy to save the female soldiers from the Arts and Crafts Regiment because they knew how to balance themselves. Yiqian pulled the rope tightly and helped the last female soldier out of the carriage. Like before, he reminded her, "Relax your body. Look up. Take a deep breath and exhale gently. Don't lower your head." Her voice sounded even better than when she was in the carriage. It was clear and gentle, like the hot spring water in winter. It was so warm that it warmed people's hearts. Du Jiai, who was pulling the rope tightly, narrowed her eyes slightly. Chapter 1805. The interaction between people was actually about fate. First, they had to be compatible with each other. Then, they had to be compatible with each other. When these two things were compatible, it would be the fate of the two people. Listening to the gentle voice that was filled with strength, Du Jiai felt that she was not destined to be with this female soldier who had been lying on the carriage for almost 3 hours. She had not met her yet, but just by listening to her voice, no matter how gentle and moving she was, she could not like her. She even had a faint feeling of disgust. It was very strange. She had always liked to see if someone was compatible with her before deciding if they could become friends. But this female soldier, she already disliked her even before meeting her. Perhaps it was because she did not take her words seriously when she crawled over earlier, so she needed to confirm it again. In any case, even if she saved her, she cannot like her. That's the last trapped member. Yi Qian pulled the rope tight. The J5, who had been keeping a close watch, was so nervous that he could not see anyone else other than Yi Qian's figure. There were only 11 minutes left until the 3-hour deadline. Female soldier Yi Qian had been lying on the swaying carriage for a full 2 hours and 49 minutes. The carriage was suspended in the abyss, and a bone-chilling cold wind kept blowing. His limbs were stiff from standing by the roadside, and Yi Qian, who was lying on the carriage, was facing the cold wind head-on. Her hands, feet, ears, and even the tip of her nose must have been frostbitten. When the Snowfield Brigade entered the Highland winter training, the most common thing they did was stand in the wind for 2 hours. When it was over, they wanted to move their legs, but their limbs did not listen to their brain. It was as if they were immobilized. If they were like this after standing on solid ground for 2 hours, then Yi Qian, as a female soldier, had been standing in the wind for almost 3 hours. Other than admiration, he respected her for being able to persevere until now. He respected the female soldier's perseverance. Yi Qian could hear what the J5 said. She raised her hand slightly and made an okay gesture. Once again, she tightened the rope. First, she slowly pulled Du Jia, who could not use any strength and could not hold onto the edge of the carriage. She needed to pull Du Jia up so that she could at least place her arms on top of the carriage. Du Jia's mental fortitude was not bad. She could still chat with Yi Qian even when her feet were in the air. She tightened her grip on the rope and relaxed her body. She raised her head slightly and looked at the female soldier who had yet to say tired. Her cheeks were red from the wind, and she said to Yi Qian, "Thank you for your hard work tonight. You were the one who pulled all of us up for 3 hours. Does your arm hurt?" It was a very ordinary conversation, as if it was just a casual topic to relax. However, Yi Qian, who was very defensive, was already on guard against her. Therefore, he only smiled at her and listened to her without replying. Yi Qian's experience from his previous life told him that when interacting with people like her, he definitely needed to remain silent. As long as it was not a question that he had to answer, it was best to smile and use his silence to let her know that he did not want to talk too much. Du Jia, who was waiting for Yi Qian's reply with a smile, narrowed her eyes again. She lowered her head to hide the displeasure in her eyes, as her shoulders were now parallel to the carriage. The moment she lowered her head, her originally relaxed body suddenly tensed up. With a look of horror on her face, she quickly looked up, not daring to lower her head again. She was suspended in the air, and below her feet was a bottomless abyss. Just one look at it was enough to make all the cells in her body scream. Chapter 1806. Don't lower your head. Slowly extend your hands and place them on top of the carriage. Take a deep breath and place your center of gravity on your arms. Don't be afraid. The male soldiers are pulling on the ropes in front of the carriage. They will pull you all the way to the front of the carriage. Yi Qian naturally noticed the fear in her eyes and knew why she was frightened. The searchlight on the windbreaker hat emitted a snow-white light. Du Jia couldn't help but close her eyes and avert her gaze. Without a doubt, Du Jia was a very beautiful and elegant civilian soldier. She had a beautiful oval face and a pair of classical willow leaf eyebrows. Although her eyes were closed, her eyeliner was long, and it was obvious that she had a pair of bright eyes. At this moment, although her eyes were closed, the arrogance and confidence between her eyebrows were still soaring. This was a female soldier who liked to put herself at the center of everything. No wonder when they first met, she spoke as if she was giving orders. Yi Qian moved back. When the J5 saw that the last female soldier had half her body pulled up, he immediately ordered Yi Qian to move back. After he finished speaking, he immediately stared at the wheels. The muscles on his face were tense, as if he had entered a battle. Every part of his face exuded a fierce aura. Du Jiai, who had finally climbed up, slowly opened her eyes. She saw that the female soldier was slowly moving back with her arms and legs spread out. Meanwhile, she was being pulled up bit by the ropes. There was the weight of two people on top of the carriage. Even though they were both light and graceful female soldiers, the roof of the carriage creaked because of the weight. This was a sound that made one's scalp go numb and goosebumps rise all over their body. Because of the wind in the carriage, they couldn't hear it. But now they could hear it clearly. Every sound was enough to make one tremble in fear. Du Jiai, who was as stiff as a rock, knew that her face must be deathly pale. She also knew that her expression must be very, very ugly. She would never show her ugliest and most cowardly side to others, nor would she let others know about it. But now, she was seen clearly by a female soldier. The embarrassment in her heart was more than just a little. She wished she could make the female soldier close her eyes and not look at her again. There's ice on the roof of the car. If you spread your arms and legs like me, not only can you spread your body center of gravity, you can also maintain your balance. Yi Qian had been watching Du Jiai the whole time. He saw the stiffness on her face, and he also saw the moment she opened her eyes. A haze flashed across her beautiful eyes. Yi Qian wasn't a meddlesome person, and he wasn't very curious either. He didn't pay much attention to why there was a haze in the other party's eyes, and only did his duty to remind her. At the same time, Xia Jinyuan had already arrived at the back of the car. He jumped out of the car and covered his face, revealing only his sharp eyes. Li Jinyin looked at the familiar figure who was completely covered. It took him a few seconds to realize who it was. He said to the 5 female soldiers who were so cold that they looked like they would faint at any moment, "The 5 of you, go rest in the car." They really needed a good rest. Their feet were stepping on the cold gravel. No matter how they moved, even if they stomped their feet, there was no way to warm their feet. They didn't even want to move their lips. They quickly nodded at him to express their gratitude. Then, one by one, they moved their frozen feet to the car that had just turned off. Han Jing was the first to jump out of the car. At a glance, he saw the 5 figures who, although dressed in swollen clothes, had the figures of women walking towards him. His eyes lit up, and his gaze swept across the 5 figures like an X-ray. He was looking for his target. Chapter 1807. The first one wasn't. She was a little short. The second one wasn't either. Her walking posture wasn't right. The third, fourth, fifth, none of them were. They didn't have the aura Du Jiai had when she walked. That noble, including his mother, had said that the second daughter of the Du family had a classy aura. Even if she wore clothes that cost 10 or 20 yuan, she would still look luxurious. To him, that was called arrogance. It couldn't be called classy at all. You must be frozen. Hurry up and rest in the car. The water in the thermal flask hasn't cooled down yet. Hurry up and drink some warm water to warm your stomach. Han Jing went up and helped one of the female soldiers who walked like a pretty girl from a humble family. His deep voice was filled with doting gentleness. G3, who had jumped down from the car, saw this and felt goosebumps all over his body. Then he coughed in a low voice. The V8 in front seemed to have its own receiver and decoder, and in a second, it accurately interpreted his comrade's low cough. He quickly and accurately translated it. Guys who had dated more than 10 times were indeed different. They were so experienced that they were at the point of perfection when it came to seducing girls. While they were still thinking about how to open their mouths, his hands were already on the female soldier's shoulders. What was worse was that he didn't share his experience with his comrades in advance, leaving them standing there like wooden pillars. When the female soldier came over, he only nodded reservedly. The female soldier, Wu Ziwei, indeed needed someone to help her up. Han Jing had saved the damsel in distress, making her extremely grateful. "Thank you. Sorry to trouble you." She was still speaking so softly. V8, who was the closest to them, was dumbfounded. Damn, she still had to thank him. As the target approached, V8 decisively and casually stretched out his leg. Han Jing, who was talking to the female soldier, seemed to have a detector installed under his feet. He nimbly avoided his comrades tripping and took a step before turning back. Let's give them all the hot water in the car. They're all so cold that they're shivering. I'm afraid they'll catch a cold. He spoke worriedly, making V8, G3, and the others feel a toothache. The female soldier was left in Han Zheng's care. Xia Jinyuan, who had already exchanged a few words with Li Jinyin, ordered loudly, "Get the snow shovels. Try to shovel the road out in 5 hours." It was not a small area of collapse. 5 hours was considered a conservative time. Li Jinyin only saw the figures of the Snowfield Brigade and knew that his comrades from the Storm Commandos had not come up. His eyes darkened slightly as he shoveled the snow, and he said to Xia Jinyuan, "I plan to apply to enter the northwest of Xinjiang every winter to complete winter training. When the time comes, I'll need your guidance." Not only do we need to enter the highlands to complete winter training every year, but we also need to strengthen our land operations. Your water combat skills are already quite advanced. Next, raise your land combat skills. After 3 years of hard work, you will have some results. Look up to the SEALs of West America and aim to surpass them. The Western SEALs Special Forces were one of the top 10 special forces in the world. They were known as the Western American Amphibious Commando Team. They were established in 1962 and had a history of nearly 40 years. They had become the Western Americans' trump card to carry out local wars and deal with emergencies. Hearing this, Li Jinyin shoveled a large piece of snow down the cliff and said calmly, "The Special Forces team you lead is the real amphibious commando team in our country. If you and I didn't work together this time, I wouldn't have known that you're so strong. You're my target now." As for the SEALs, at this point, Li Jinyin lowered his head slightly and did not continue. The sound of shoveling snow was heard. He seemed to have said something else. His thin lips moved slightly, but no one knew what he said. Chapter 1808. Xia Jinyuan tossed the snow and the engineering shovel away. Wearing gloves, he raised his hand and patted Li Jinyin, whose eyebrows were tightly knitted. He sneered, "With your ability, we all believe that such a day will come." He shoveled the snow quickly, removing a large chunk with each shovel. In just a few sentences, he had removed a few square meters of snow. There was no way he could be unhappy. Du Jiai, the snake, was right beside his little fox. Although he knew that his little fox was a smart girl, Du Jiai was a woman who knew how to conduct herself well. She was also very good at talking. When he talked to her, he felt that she was a very cultured woman. This was her appearance, the appearance that had fooled countless people. The real Du Jiai was a venomous snake. No one knew when she would bite someone, and the person who was bitten might not even know that the person who bit them was Du Jiai, who was kind, caring, and considerate of others. This woman's methods were even more ruthless and scheming than a man's. If his little fox were to encounter her, he was really afraid that she would be at a disadvantage. When Li Jinyin saw this, he thought that Han Zholi was speeding up so that he could see Yi Qian earlier. He couldn't help but increase the strength in his hands. He also caught up with him and threw large chunks of snow down the cliff. You have to be bold, meticulous, and accurate to know what they need from a man at that moment. Just like just now, a few female soldiers were swaying as they walked. It was obvious that they needed someone to support them. Then, I helped them into the car and said a few words of concern and consideration. They would only thank me if I said something considerate. How could they be angry? I wasn't like a hungry wolf who pounced on them and touched them. I was very gentlemanly, okay? Didn't you see that I only supported them by their arms and shoulders when I helped them into the car? If they couldn't get up, I would let them kneel on my knee and climb up by themselves with one hand on my shoulder. I didn't do anything inappropriate during the entire process. This is called gentlemanly. Han Zheng shared his experience generously so that the group of bachelors will be able to resolve their confusion. When the group of bachelors heard this, they really felt that listening to a gentleman's words is better than studying for 10 years. His ability to date more than 10 girls was not a bluff. He really had some ability. Receiving the gazes of admiration from his comrades, Han Jing enjoyed it very much. All right, I'll teach you more in the future so that you'll know how to please girls when you go out. Each of you will marry a good wife. Let's get to work first. Shovel the road, open in 5 hours. It's a big project. The Snowfield Brigade members helped Yi Qian loosen her bones, massaged her shoulders, and warmed up her hands. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with her body, they picked up the engineering shovel and started shoveling the snow. They needed to restore traffic as soon as possible and try to drag the car in front back onto the road as soon as possible. Du Jiai looked at Yi Qian, who was treated like a princess by the male soldiers, and sneered. She was definitely a female soldier who liked to flaunt her superiority and wanted to perform well. Otherwise, why would she be the only one climbing up the car when there were so many male soldiers around? She had seen many female soldiers like her. They didn't have any background, could endure hardships, were a little ambitious, and were smart. Just like Lu Yuan and Wei Jiyue in her regiment, they were only 30% capable, but they had to grit their teeth and pretend to be very capable. No matter how beautiful her voice was, it couldn't hide her competitive nature. Chapter 1809. Those male soldiers really knew how to lower themselves. A few of them were actually serving one person, rubbing her hands and massaging her shoulders. Was there a need to care so much for a soldier? What kind of soldier was a soldier if they didn't suffer? On the other hand, Du Jiai's face was dark and gloomy. She caught sight of Instructor Gao, trying to get up, but due to his fractured arm, even a simple movement was so stiff that it looked like he was about to fall. The sharp-eyed Du Jiai immediately ran over and reminded Lu Yuan, who was the closest to Instructor Gao. Lu Yuan, help our instructor up. Lu Yuan, who was a prisoner, had been guarding the instructor who had a bandage around his hand. As everyone successfully escaped, she suddenly woke up from her sleep and got up in a hurry. Instructor, do you want to walk around? Let me help you. Let me help you. You were asleep just now, right? If you're tired, go back to sleep. I'll help you walk around. Du Jiai walked over quickly and reached out to support the instructor's uninjured arm. Wei Jiayue's complexion doesn't look right. Hurry up and take a look. Is she sick? I saw that the rescue team brought some commonly used medicine. See if Wei Jiayue needs it. Instructor Gao was a little anxious. Hurry up and take a look. You're the only one in our group who knows how to nurse. All right, call me if you need anything. Lu Yuan glanced at her empty hands before turning to look at Du Jiai, who had pushed her out of the room without a trace. This person really doesn't change. Does she think that everyone is like her, only knowing how to act in front of the leaders? Du Jiai maintained a polite smile in the face of her comrades in different gaze. She lifted her chin slightly and replied with an air of arrogance that matched her temperament. Thanks to Lu Yuan's knowledge of nursing, our group was spared a lot of trouble along the way. Thank you, Lu Yuan. She thanked her sincerely. No one would doubt her sincerity. Yi Qian, who was carrying the commonly used medicine, paused for a moment before walking over with a normal expression. Sorry to disturb you. Here are some commonly used medicine. Do you need it? J5 and the rest started shoveling the snow, while she was given a temporary break and a mission to communicate with the art troupe to see if they needed any more help. The members of the Snowfield Brigade would appear in places that might not be suitable for military personnel. Therefore, it was not suitable for them to appear too many times and leave a bad impression. Yi Qian was different. She was a female soldier. Even if she joined the Snowfield Brigade, it would still be 3 years later. It was more appropriate for her to show her face now than any of them. Just like Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian could only see her eyes, which were as dark as the night. She wore a cold mask over her nose and lips, so Instructor Gao and the others could only see her eyes. You always appear when we need help the most. I really don't know how to express our gratitude. Du Jiai took the bag of medicine. After she finished speaking, she smiled at Instructor Gao, who had just moved his stiff body a little, and said, Instructor, this female soldier in front of you is called Yi Qian. You should remember her name. When you return to the capital, you must mention her to your superiors. Look, She spent 3 hours alone on the carriage to save all of us. She didn't even need the help of the male soldiers. 3 hours of back and forth exhausted her. Fortunately, the male soldiers knew how to care for her. They massaged and rubbed her hands for a long time before her complexion improved slightly. Chapter 1810. Speaking was indeed an art. Depending on the person sitting at the right height, they would hear different things. Their understanding of the situation would definitely be different from people of different heights. The higher one stood, the more he could tell if there was a deeper meaning in a sentence, if there was a hidden meaning, if the speaker wanted to express something secretly, or in other words, what kind of state of mind the speaker was in when he said those words. Instructor Gao was an instructor in the arts regiment and had a high level of political training. He could tell several meanings from Du Jiai's words. Firstly, the female soldier Yi Qian's courage was commendable, but she was too brave and did not handle the situation well. Secondly, as a female soldier, she was naturally weaker than the male soldiers. Knowing this, she still persisted. This showed that she was a female soldier who loved to show off and lost her composure. Thirdly, since she chose to persist, she was so tired that she needed the male soldiers to serve her. This showed that she lacked the spirit of a soldier. Fourthly, the male soldiers were not strict enough and cared too much about the female soldier. This showed that their relationship was messy. This was what Instructor Gao understood from Du Jiai's words. But it was undeniable that if not for this female soldier who loved to show off persisting for 3 hours and gritting her teeth to save them, they might still be stuck in the carriage, frightened and frightened. Therefore, Instructor Gao smiled and said, "You're right. We must report this to the higher-ups and reward the soldiers who risked their lives to save us. Yi Qian, you've worked hard tonight. If it weren't for you, we would probably still be in the carriage." As he said this, his words became more sincere. However, you need to think twice before you do something like this. Don't tire yourself out too much. After all, Instructor Gao was not a soldier in the arts regiment. He could only give a few pointers in a very reserved manner. If he said too much, it would make people dislike him. Lu Yuan gently weighed the plastic bag with the medicine. The soft hua-hua sound seemed to have interrupted Instructor Gao's words. Then, she smiled at Yi Qian, full of kindness and gratitude. Hearing this, Yi Qian, who already knew how to deal with this, said politely, "You're right. My comrades were also very worried when I went up like this. They were afraid that I would increase the weight on the carriage and cause the entire carriage to fall off the cliff. Fortunately, my body is light. Although it made my comrades sweat in their hearts, I could be considered to have successfully completed the mission given to me by my comrades." Yi Qian was never a pushover. Facing Du Jiai's gratitude on the surface and all kinds of words to trip him up, he humbly accepted Instructor Gao's advice and politely used a different method to explain why she, a female soldier, had to climb up the carriage. "You've considered everything thoroughly. It's because of this that we're all safe. Yi, our unit needs female soldiers like you." As he said this, his gaze landed on Du Jiai. He then turned his head to look at the other soldiers who were still breathing. Then he sighed. "Jiai, you all need to learn from her. Just now, the carriage only shook a little, but you all were so scared that you screamed. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was able to remain calm and continue to rescue us. You all need to learn from him." Chapter 1811. Du Jiai was someone who could keep her composure, especially when it came to dealing with matters in front of her superior. Upon hearing those words, she reined in her emotions and replied humbly, "You're right. We're indeed lacking in courage. Even though we're performing arts troops, we're still soldiers. A soldier's courage and bravery mustn't be lacking." She was really something. She even gave her a soft rebuff. With just a few words, she changed the instructor's impression of her. Du Jiai maintained a polite smile as she stared at Yi Qian and sized him up secretly. She had a pair of good eyes. They were dark and clear. "Ha! Female soldiers like her were used to pretending to be innocent. She was wearing a coal mask, so she couldn't see what she looked like. It was a pity. It didn't matter. As long as she knew her name, she would find out when she returned to the capital. It had always been easy for Du Jiai to find out a person's background. She originally wanted to make things difficult for her now, but the instructor obviously admired her. She could only keep her cool for now. It wouldn't be too late to deal with her later. She had seen her at her worst and was still suspicious of her. She even gave her a soft rebuff. She loved to deal with female soldiers who were naturally rebellious. There was no hurry. She would deal with her until she didn't even know who she had offended. Du Jiai, who was obviously excited, smiled sweetly after she finished speaking. She kept looking at Yi Qian. It wasn't a polite gaze, but a gaze filled with arrogance and prejudice. Yi Qian calmly smiled at her and turned to look at the instructor who was speaking. That's right. No matter what kind of soldier you are, as long as you wear this uniform, you're a soldier. You can't lose the face and image of a soldier. Instructor Gao was very satisfied with Du Jiai's answer. He looked at her approvingly and said to Lu Yuan, "If there's anything you can solve, try to solve it yourself. Don't cause trouble for the army." A male soldier from the Arts and Crafts Regiment walked over. Perhaps he had something to say to Instructor Gao, so he greeted Du Jiai and nodded at Yi Qian with a smile. He said, "Sorry to disturb you," and then helped Instructor Gao over. Lu Yuan answered Instructor Gao with a straight face. "Understood. Don't worry, we won't cause any trouble for the army. I'm always at ease when you guys handle things." After Instructor Gao finished speaking, he left with the help of the male soldier. When he got up, Lu Yuan immediately said politely to Yi Qian, "Come and rest with us for a while. The male soldiers are exhausted from shoveling the snow. We'll take over their duties midway and shovel the snow together. What do you think?" Du Jiai, who hadn't left, seemed to have heard a joke. She pursed her lips and laughed. "As long as the male soldiers aren't afraid of us causing trouble, just let us know if you need anything. We definitely won't embarrass the female soldiers. We have to show them that female soldiers are not to be trifled with." She looked at Lu Yuan and said with a faint smile, "Lu Yuan, you can't be like last time where you fainted before you even started working. We can't embarrass the Arts and Crafts Regiment. We have to show the soldiers in the army that the female soldiers in the Arts and Crafts Regiment don't just know how to sing and dance. As the female soldiers in the Arts and Crafts Regiment, as long as there's a need for us, we can beautifully complete the tasks given to us by our superiors. Yi Qian, please take care of my comrade. If there's any problem, you can come and find me anytime. If you feel unwell, you have to tell us immediately. Don't force yourself just to save face, understand?" Chapter 18:12. It was fine if she didn't get thanked for saving someone. She didn't save the person because of the gratitude, but because it was her duty as a soldier to save the person. The problem was that the person she saved didn't say thank you, but instead started to create trouble for her. Yi Qian wasn't a soft-hearted person, and he wasn't magnanimous enough to forgive Du Jiai for causing trouble for him. When he heard what she said, his voice turned cold, and he said sternly, "Female soldier, with your intelligence, I don't think you'll always say things that will cause misunderstandings." After he said that, Lu Yuan's eyes lit up and Du Jiai's face darkened. Since he had already spoken, Yi Qian wouldn't go back on his words. He stared coldly at Du Jiai, whose eyes had darkened, and said sternly, "Can I understand you? First, you said that I was putting up a strong front to save face. Then you said that I saved someone, and in the end, you asked my comrades to help me. You said all these things on purpose to tell everyone that I'm only this capable, and that I'm just putting up a strong front for the sake of showing off." Du Jiai's originally gloomy face abruptly changed. No one had ever dared to give her such a straight face, and no one had ever dared to criticize her so boldly. Moreover, no one had ever criticized her in front of the leaders. She wanted to stop Yi Qian from continuing, but Yi Qian wouldn't give her the chance. "You won't explain anything to me. You're a smart female soldier, so everything you say should be clear and accurate. As a soldier, you should say whatever is on your mind. You shouldn't always say things that are either digging up old scores or have hidden meanings. And don't tell me that I misunderstood you or misunderstood you. Based on what you said to Instructor Gao just now, if I didn't explain, Instructor Gao would have misunderstood me. I'm giving you face now by waiting for Instructor Gao to leave. I hope you can cherish the face that others have given you. Lu Yuan, who was flabbergasted, almost laughed out loud because of what he said. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Her words made Du Jiai, who had always maintained a good image in front of her superiors, change her expression and put her on the spot. Yi Jian was not the kind of person who was eloquent. She always knew when to advance and when to retreat. She also knew how to treat the right people. It was very tiring to get along with someone like Du Jiai. No matter when, she was the only one who could play the lead role, and the others could only play the supporting roles, and the supporting roles that obediently followed her orders. If anyone dared to overstep her, as long as that person's mistake was caught in her hands, she would definitely take it out again and again. Yi Qian, who had already noticed something was amiss, did not intend to get involved. This was the arts and crafts regiment's matter. Even their instructor did not say anything. As a soldier from the Marines, she only needed to watch quietly. But of all things, she shouldn't have stepped out to step on Yi Qian and deliberately ruined her image. She was a soldier, and soldiers had to maintain their image at all times. They could not allow others to destroy their image and tarnish their reputation. The first time she took a small step back and clearly told her not to push her luck. She probably used her silence to tell her not to push Yi Qian, which made her misunderstand that Yi Qian was easy to bully. Since that was the case, she didn't mind not giving her face and warning her. She wanted her to restrain her evil intentions. Chapter 1813. Although the military had iron-like discipline, not everyone could be impartial. Instructor Gao was biased towards Du Jiai, but that was mostly due to her ability to get things done. Moreover, every word she said was true to the bottom of her heart, and she never violated any discipline, causing the leaders to worry about her. Naturally, they would admire her. Originally, after leaving the borders, there would be no more social interactions, but she insisted on doing some dirty things. How could Yi Qian allow her to do so again and again? Du Jiai was so angry that she almost fainted. Hearing this, Lu Yuan trembled in fear, but she also felt relieved when she saw Du Jiai's expression turn darker. She quickly stood up and said softly, "Forget it. It's just a small matter. Jiai, don't be angry. Look, I'm not even angry at you." Lu Yuan was shocked and angry at the mention of that old incident that she still couldn't let go of. That was the only time she made a fool of herself, and it became a topic that Du Jiai would use to make fun of her. No one liked others to talk about their mistakes, and Lu Yuan didn't like it either. But what could she do? Du Jiai wasn't an ordinary soldier. She didn't like Yi Qian from the start. Now that she heard what he said, her uncertain expression made her even more afraid. "I'm sorry, Yi Qian. I really didn't mean anything by it. I'm just a straightforward person, and I'm not good with words. If I've offended you, please forgive me." Du Jiai's uncertain expression only took a few seconds to adjust. Her bright eyes under the hood were filled with sincerity. "I'm very, very sorry. Please forgive me." Lu Yuan originally felt that her anger had been vented, but now, following Du Jiai's apology, she felt an extremely cold chill run up from the bottom of her feet. Based on her understanding of Du Jiai, the more amiable she was, the more it meant that she had set her sights on someone and would make that person suffer. Seeing her gaze on Yi Qian, Lu Yuan's fingers trembled violently. It was one thing for her to be scolded by her. That incident was indeed her fault. But what about Yi Qian? Not only did she not thank Yi Qian, she even hinted to Instructor Gao that Yi Qian was just a stubborn female soldier and made things difficult for him. How could she do this? It was one thing to trample on those new recruits from time to time, but how could she make things difficult for Yi Qian, who had saved her life? Now that Yi Qian was angry, she still thought that Yi Qian was wrong. He even targeted Yi Qian. "Du Jiai, do you really think you're a big shot?" Instructor Gao, who had said something to the male soldier, walked over again. Du Jiayi was used to destroying peace. She held Lu Yuan's arm and said to Yi Qian, "I'm very, very sorry, and I'm very, very grateful." Instructor Gao wanted to go over to see how much snow needed to be shoveled. He did not give Du Jiayi a chance to continue speaking. He came over and said, "Come with us to see how the snow is being shoveled and discuss the situation with the army." He reminded Lu Yuan to take good care of Wei Jiayue and left. Finally, Instructor Gao showed concern for Yi Qian. "You have to be careful too. You've been exposed to the cold wind for a few hours. We brought some winter coats with us. Put on a few more and sit next to Lu Yuan and the rest. You can keep each other warm." Lu Yuan noticed that Du Jiayi's eyes narrowed slightly. She gave Yi Qian a faint smile before leaving with Instructor Gao and the male soldiers from the Arts and Crafts Regiment. "Yi Qian, just you wait. I wanted to punish you lightly, but now... just you wait. I'll deal with you slowly." Chapter 1814. The smile in her eyes did not shock Yi Qian. Instead, it made Lu Yuan clench her fists. She did not know if it was because she was too agitated, but her chest felt stuffy. Even after taking a few deep breaths, she did not feel better. From a moment Du Jiayi apologized to the moment she left, Yi Qian remained indifferent. Even his aura did not change. Therefore, Instructor Gao did not notice anything strange when he walked over. Du Jiayi was not the only one who knew how to destroy peace. Yi Qian, who had lived 2 lives, knew how to do it too. Du Jiayi saw Yi Jinli's familiar shift between smiling and Yi Jinli's mood a second ago, so she apologized again and again. Coincidentally, Du Jiayi saw the familiar shift between Yi Jinli's mood and smile, because she knew that she had encountered a tough character who could see through what she wanted to do with a single glance. Just as Yi Qian said, Du Jiayi was a very smart female soldier. Compared to the ignorant Ying, she was much smarter. When interacting with such a person, one either had to be submissive or warn her not to go overboard. Yi Qian was not one to be submissive. In her previous life, she had lived a cowardly life. In this life, she wanted to control the world and live a carefree life. Of course, as a soldier, she could not act in vain. Acting in vain was destroying one's own future. She would not do something so foolish as to destroy one's own future. With a faint smile in her eyes, she sent Instructor Gao off. Turning her head sideways, she saw Lu Yuan staring at Du Jiayi's back view with an unfathomable gaze. Even she could tell that they had some conflicts in the past. So how could Instructor Gao not be able to tell? "I'll go with you to see your comrades. Now that the roads are disrupted, a small cold will cause big problems." The smiling voice pulled Lu Yuan's attention back. Yi Qian looked at the female soldier who was looking at her with a complicated expression. She pretended not to notice anything and glanced at Wei Jia. She whispered, "It looks like something is wrong." Lu Yuan originally wanted to say a few more words to Yi Qian, but hearing this she immediately trotted over to Wei Jiayue's side. She saw that Wei Jiayue and Ma Min were leaning against each other with their eyes closed. They were so tired that they had fallen asleep. Wearing an oxygen mask to sleep, Wei Jiayue did not have a fever, but she looked very tired. Fortunately, the Zhang soldiers had already set up the tents that were originally for the sentries and were calling them over to sleep. He woke up the 2 people who were fast asleep and helped them to the tent. "Sleep in the tent. Watch your feet first." Yi Qian reminded Wei Jiayue, who was so sleepy that she was stumbling. He put his arm around her shoulders and put her weight on him to make her feel more comfortable. Du Jiayi is the daughter of a high-ranking official in the capital. She is 24 years old this year and has a brother who is 9 years older than her and has real power in the Nangguang military region. We belong to the Nangguang military region's art troupe, so everyone has to give in to us. Fortunately, you're not from the Nangguang military region's army. Her sister is 7 years older than her, and her brother is 1 year younger than her. He's also quite capable. Last year, he graduated from university and worked in the provincial government. Du Jiayi has a sweet tongue and knows how to coax people, so she's quite popular in her family. You can check which official in the capital has the surname Du and has 2 sons and 2 daughters. Then you'll know her background. Also, her mother, Madam Li, is also a very powerful person. If anyone dares to bully her daughter, she will not let them off easily. However, this family is very prideful, so they will be amiable on the surface. Just like just now, no matter how angry she was able to put down her pride and apologize to you. Chapter 18:15. Yi Qian, who was listening quietly, had a dark look in his eyes when he heard the words Madam Li. They were only 5 meters away from the tent. Wei Jiayue spoke quickly and softly into Yi Qian's ear. Even Lu Yuan did not hear her. Why did she have to tell Yi Qian? Because this was the only thing she could do to help. She only hoped that Yi Qian would be more vigilant and avoid them in the future. The Wei family was considered a big family, so even they had to give in to the Du family. Yi Qian, who had been listening quietly, said, "Thank you." Then he reminded her, "Sleep a little deeper. We only set up 1 tent." They did not know when they would be able to shovel the snow away, so the Tibetan soldiers used 2 tents to avoid the cold. Lu Yuan, who had not noticed anything, walked out of the tent and said to Yi Qian, "Thank you for your hard work tonight. You saved so many of us. Although I can't mention your name in the report and let the army reward you, I will always remember that there was a female soldier who took the risk to save others. Thank you, Yi Qian." Compared to Du Jiai's gratitude, Lu Yuan's gratitude was much more sincere. She straightened her back and looked at Yi Qian with a sincere expression as she saluted him. "Thank you, Yi Qian. Thank you. If not for your timely appearance, she and her comrades would not have dared to climb onto the roof of the carriage, and it would not have been possible for them to save so many people in just 3 hours." She stood at the side and listened to the creaking sound of the carriage. She was so scared that her knees went weak. On the other hand, Yi Qian, who was lying on the roof, was so calm and brave. Even when they screamed in fear, he was still calm and collected until he saved everyone. Even if Du Jiai had her eyes on Yi Qian, she was not afraid. She belonged to a different division and branch. No matter how powerful she was, it was impossible for her to cross divisions and branch to cause trouble for Yi Qian. Looking at Yi Qian, who was working for them, Lu Yuan, who felt apologetic, bit her lip as if she was making a big decision. After a while, she said, "Du Jiai and I were both female soldiers for 2 years. We were friends for a year, so close that we could share meals together. Later on, when new soldiers joined the army, their opinions differed from hers, and the conflict began to deepen. But it's only about class affairs. Last July, when I got close to Wei Jiayue, who was transferred here, our relationship deteriorated even more. In the end, I applied to be transferred to Wei Jiayue's dormitory, far away from her. The further I was from her, the clearer I could see Du Jiai's character." Lu Yuan could not directly tell Yi Qian to be careful. Based on her understanding of Du Jiai, if she really said something, it would be difficult for her to successfully leave the army. Lu Yuan's behavior just now was clearly because she had her eyes on Yi Qian. If she did not say anything, she would feel guilty. Yi Qian should have sensed something. Otherwise, he would not have said something so indifferent, causing Du Jiai to be at a disadvantage and earning Instructor Gao's praise. Whether or not Lu Yuan knew or sensed something, Lu Yuan could not lose her conscience. "I rarely get along with people, except for Du Jiai. Fortunately, you're not from our military, so we won't see each other much in the future. If we meet again, just pretend we don't know each other and avoid her." Actually, Yi Qian, who was a mess, did not have the heart to listen. But she was talking about Du Jiai, so she had to listen. Because Yi Ying's mother-in-law's surname was Li. Her husband's surname was Du. Sun Dongqing had complained in the village that Yi Ying's sister-in-law was not easy to get along with. Chapter 18:16. Yi Qian's heart was in a mess. In her previous life, she had been harmed by Yi Ying until she was like a stray dog. She was the golden phoenix that flew out of the ravine of Shuku village in Fujian town. She had provoked all the relatives of Yi and Sun families to try to get close to Yi Jifan. As for herself, she was always the target of ridicule. Whenever Yi Ying was mentioned, she would be mentioned. When she was mentioned, she would be said to be a disgrace to public morals and that she had disgraced 8 generations of her ancestors. Why did those people support Yi Ying? Simple, because Yi Ying married into a noble family. Yi Jifan also rose through the ranks and became a high-ranking official. At first, Yi Ying didn't dare to make things difficult for her. She only warned her not to go home and embarrass her family. She also said that her father was successful in his career and that if she went back and ruined her father's reputation, the whole family would want to beat her to death. In her previous life, she was a coward. She didn't dare to go back to the village after being threatened by Yi Ying. When she was 18, she went back to get an ID card and was scolded. When Yi Ying returned from studying abroad, she went back happily but was chased away. Later on, she slowly grew up and learned how to resist. Yi Ying got married. The most tragic days came. Yi Ying, who got married, seemed to have found the strongest backing. She started to use all her power to make things difficult for her. She made things difficult for her and wanted to take her life at all times. She knew that it was Yi Ying who had caused her to lose her job, be evicted, blocked her way, and even set her house on fire. Only then did she realize that Yi Ying did not make things difficult for her before she got married. Most of the time, it was just that her words were a little harsh. She got a job but couldn't get paid. She was chased after getting off work in the middle of the night. Her door was broken into when she slept at night. These are the real difficulties. She used to be ruthless. If she had the chance, she would make Yi Ying's life a living hell. She would make her lose everything. She used to beg the heavens to give her a chance. She even went to Buddha and made a wish that Yi Ying would lose everything in the future. And now, thinking of all the things from his previous life, Yi Qian suddenly laughed. It was not a hearty laugh, but a low, deep, and oppressive laugh. It seemed to be a joyous laugh, but it also seemed to be filled with hatred. Lu Yuan, who had not yet left, stared blankly at Yi Qian, unable to react for a moment. Du family. If this Du family was Yi Ying's in-laws in her previous life, then could she directly cut off Yi Ying's path to climb up the social ladder? Would he be able to solve all the worries in one go and make Yi Ying in this life truly have nothing? In her previous life, she had so much hope, but in the end, her wish did not come true. In this life, since the heavens had allowed her to return to the starting point, to the source of all tragedies, how could she let them down? How could she let them down? Because of Yi Jifan, Yi Ying was able to marry into a prestigious family. In this life, how could he fulfill Yi Ying's wishes? Just you wait, Yi Ying. The show is about to begin. Lowering her head, Yi Qian raised her hand to wipe away the tears that were about to overflow from her eyes. She gently closed her eyes and calmed the waves in her heart. Lu Yuan was shocked by the sudden anger that she was emitting. She could not help but take a small step back and carefully asked, "Are you okay? Is it because of Du Jia? Don't be angry. She's just like that. You're not even in the same unit as her. She doesn't have the ability to cross the military to make things difficult for you." Lu Yuan was just an ordinary military soldier. She did not know about Du Jia's family background. Chapter 1817. She didn't know, so she had nothing to worry about, unlike Wei Jiua, who was worried and fearful because she knew. Yi Qian knew that her emotions had fluctuated just now, and there was even a hint of murderous intent. She had already calmed down and looked up. Even though the windshield mask covered the smile on her face, her clear eyes were still smiling. "Thank you for your concern. I just thought of something, not because of Du Jia." Oh, that's good. For some reason, Lu Yuan suddenly felt a little afraid of this female soldier in front of her. She felt inexplicably afraid and said uneasily, Then I'm relieved. You go to your work, I'll go back to my tent to rest." Without waiting for Yi Qian to speak, She turned around and went back to her tent in a panic. Her heart was beating a little fast, and she couldn't continue talking to her. She had a feeling that she would throw a knife at her at any time. It was better to leave quickly. She couldn't afford to offend Yi Qian and Du Jiai. Yi Qian didn't take Lu Yuan's strange behavior to heart. He turned around and saw her enter her tent, then stand by the roadside and look up at the male soldiers on the snowy mountain. There were 4 engineering shovels in the car, and together with the 2 that Yi Qian brought over, there were enough shovels for 6 people to shovel the snow together. J5 and the other members of the Snowfield Brigade were the first to shovel the snow, while Qin Xiu, the Tibetan soldiers, and the 2 male soldiers from the Arts and Crafts Regiment were on guard. They stared at the snowy mountain in the dark like a hibernating monster. Once they noticed that the snow was loose, they would immediately inform the male soldiers who were shoveling the snow. Qin Xiu's gaze would always inadvertently fall on Yi Qian. The usually sharp Yi Qian was walking directly towards him. The 2 leaders of the Arts and Crafts Regiment were instructing their soldiers to unconditionally cooperate with the soldiers from the army to clear the road together. As Yi Qian walked closer, he heard a male soldier from the Arts and Crafts Regiment say, worriedly, "The Matsa army hasn't arrived yet. I suspect that there might be an avalanche ahead. Maybe they're also trying to save people." The Tibetan route through Mazadaban was a very big S-curve. If the curve ahead was blocked, they would not be able to see anything. There's no need to be suspicious. Since we haven't arrived yet, there's definitely an avalanche ahead of us. Let's clear the path for the 2 vehicles first. The rescue commander frowned as he looked at the huge pile of snow. At this rate, it would be difficult for him to complete the task within 5 hours. Qin Xiu, who had already noticed Yi Qian walking out, lowered his head and said something to Instructor Gao, then strode over. Yi Qian looked at Qin Xiu, who was not affected by the cold at all, just like the J5 and the others. He could not help muttering in his heart, "He looks like a gentleman who is painting by the window, but why does he look like a marching soldier now?" The other 2 male soldiers from the Arts and Crafts Regiment were so cold that they wrapped themselves in thick winter clothing. Fortunately, their backs were straight enough. Otherwise, they would look like brown bears in the mountains. They were very clumsy. "Are you looking for me?" Qin Xiu came over and asked. "Are you worried about when the road will open?" Yi Qian raised his eyebrows. "You kept looking at me just now. I thought you were looking for me." If he was looking for her for no reason, then why was he looking at her? He only looked at her occasionally, and it was not on purpose. He only looked at her from the corner of his eyes. How did she notice him like that? Qin Xiu wanted to laugh. He was indeed a soldier. His sensitivity was indeed shocking. Chapter 1818. It seemed like he could not sneak a few glances at her in the future. He might as well look at her openly. If he was caught, he could still smile. Qin Xiu, who had always had a clear goal, was already thinking about how to get along with Yi Qian. There is indeed something. It's about my identity. Since she was already here, he could not let her come for nothing. Qin Xiu gestured for her to speak further away. "I have something to do here. Originally, I came here with another interpreter. When I arrived at 30 Miles Camp, I heard that the Nongguang military's art troupe was here, so I followed them as a reporter. The people in the art troupe have always thought that I'm a reporter. That's why I need your cooperation." Yi Qian's face was serious. "I will definitely cooperate. I regret coming here to look for you now. Actually, I could have pretended not to know you. It would have made things easier for you." If she pretended not to know Qin Xiu, she would not be watched by Du Jiai. Speaking of Du Jiai, she thought of her background. Yi Qian could not help but purse her lips. Qin Xiu was also a person of status. She often appeared on television. It was impossible that Du Jiai did not know Qin Xiu. "Are you sure that everyone in the art troupe thinks that you're a reporter?" Since they had worked together before and knew Principal Chow, Yi Jian, who had always been quiet, could not help but ask. Qin Xiu pointed at his windshield. There was a deep smile in his eyes. Although Qin Xiu couldn't see his handsome face clearly, he could tell from his elegant eyes that he was a handsome and elegant man. He chuckled and said, "With me like this, if I hadn't spoken first, would you have recognized me?" I didn't take it off on the way here. It was too cold. No one wanted to get frostbite from the cold. If everyone was like that, then there was no weirdness. That was indeed the case. Yi Jian could not help but smile. That was also the reason why she directly confronted Du Jiai. Du Jiai had been staring at Yi Qian for a long time. Who would have thought that this Yi guy would know a reporter from the National News Department? Looks like he's not a simple person. That's right. Only someone with a powerful family would dare to go against me. Thinking of this, Du Jiai's eyes darkened. She was thinking about Yi Qian's family background based on his style of speech, aura, and posture. The more she thought about it, the colder Du Jiai's eyes became. From the looks of it, the female soldier Yi Qian's family background was not simple. No other female soldier had such a strong aura. No wonder he was so daring. It turned out that he had a powerful background. Previously, he had thought that she was trying to show off and was trying to be brave. Now, it seemed like that wasn't the case. Instead, it was because she had confidence, and even more so, she knew that even if something really did happen, nothing would happen. She would naturally deal with it. It was because of this confidence and her family background that she dared to behave like this. For a moment, Du Jiai was a little annoyed at herself for being too careless. Go back to your tent and rest. Bring that female soldier back with you. Instructor Gao instructed her in a low voice. When the road is clear, the soldiers will wake you up. If we can continue moving forward, our plan will remain unchanged. If not, we can only go back the way we came and come back in spring. Choosing to come to the northwest of the border in the middle of winter was not a wise decision. The journey was too dangerous and would cause a lot of trouble for the various military outposts. Du Jiai, who had specially come to look for Yi Qian, would not agree. She pondered for a moment before saying, "Instructor, I think we can continue moving forward. Think about it. The worse the environment, and the more we experience such an earth-shattering avalanche, we did not back down. Isn't this the courage and bravery that a soldier should have? I think the best way is to move forward and not retreat." Chapter 1819. Du Jiai was not a woman who would retreat when faced with difficulties. She always knew what she wanted and what she needed to do to get what she wanted. There was no doubt that such a person would not be eliminated by society. She would always keep pace with the times and would never be at the bottom. However, the terrifying thing about Du Jiai was that once she found out that there was someone or something that was stopping her in the process of getting what she wanted, her destructive power was not something that ordinary people could imagine. Therefore, such a person was the most dangerous person because you would never know what she would do in the next second. Would she attack her friends? Would she suddenly turn her back on her friends? Would she suddenly turn her back on you one day? She knew what she wanted, and she knew how to get it. She also had the ability to control things, so when interacting with her, one must always be clear-headed and carefully avoid her minefields, lest one be blasted into nothingness one day. Since such a person came with a purpose, how could she retreat so easily? In addition, she was already out of danger. If she continued to move forward, she could deepen the leader's impression of her. As smart as Du Jiai was, she would choose a beneficial path for herself. Obviously, the instructor was also moved by her words. He looked around, and his gaze fell slightly on Qin Xiu, who was talking to Yi Qian. He said in a low voice, "What you said makes sense. There are also 2 reporters from the news department, especially the reporter surnamed Qin. Although he doesn't like to talk much and doesn't walk around much, there were several officers who accompanied him to join us. It can be seen that this reporter Qin has some status in the news department. Your brother asked me to give you a slap. Since you're not afraid, then go ahead. It's not easy to get credit for the military arts, but since there's an opportunity now, there's no harm in fighting for it." Instructor Gao was acquainted with the Du family and had a good relationship with Du Jiai's brother. With such a relationship, Du Jiai's days in the regiment were much better than others. After speaking in a low voice, Instructor Gao frowned slightly. His voice was even softer than before. "The person you're looking for is only known to be serving at the border. He might not be here now. If you want to find him, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult." He didn't know who she was looking for. Her brother didn't tell him, so he wasn't afraid to ask too much. I'm sorry to have made you worry. This person is indeed not easy to find. However, I was entrusted by someone to do my job. It doesn't matter if I can find it or not. I'm only responsible for looking for it, not that I have to find it. Du Jiai said disapprovingly. Aunt Xiao was a sentimental person. This time, she asked her to find her son, by the way. Maybe she would forget what she asked for, but since he had already promised, he had to put in some effort and not be careless. Besides, family Xia and the Du family had different political views. Auntie Xiao had asked her to look for her son, so she wasn't a good choice. It had been 10 years since she last saw Xia Jinyuan. Who knew if he still recognized her? However, if she saw him, she would definitely recognize him. She didn't know how many times she had been bullied by him. Every time they had a group of people, he would never give her any face. He would always gang up with the Han family to bully her. She had been bullied so much when she was young that the memory was still fresh. She always wanted to get back the face she had lost back then. Since Auntie Xiao asked her to look for her son, she would do it. Instructor Gao didn't say anything else. She had always been a person with her own ideas. As long as she didn't cause trouble, it didn't matter. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.